30 degrees in Glasgow today, and this is the first vPub that I've actually pressed that go live button without having a glass of water next to me. I hope that this little intro gives me enough time to grab a glass of water. See you in a minute. I just about made it. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Thursday night. Welcome to another Thursday vPub. I have a guest tonight, and I'm excited to talk to the guest and share him with you a wee bit later. It's Alistair Day from Isle of Raasay Distillery. And Alistair's going to talk about Raasay and the whiskies and things, but we're also going to talk about a completely different concept as well, and that's the idea of crafting a style or a house style or distillery character. And that idea that we as kind of enthusiasts are used to this idea of a distillery character. And that comes from a legacy situation where the distilleries that we've grown to love over the years have been built to supply the blending industry. And it's meant that they are designed to produce a consistent spirit year after year as much as possible and remain that key or crucial ingredient to blends, for the most part, not all distilleries, of course. But that's a legacy thing. The new distilleries, the large-scale distilleries that have been built recently, think of Roselle, think of Ailsa Bay, they're being set up to produce any kind of style of spirit that the producers would wish for. Peated, heavy, oily, light, fruity, it doesn't matter. Ailsa Bay and Roselle are designed to put out any kind of whiskey at all. So think about the smaller distilleries. Think about the one that they kind of craft. And I hesitate to use the word craft, but please forgive me. I mean, context is everything. In this context, it's to try and illustrate a point. It's scale, size, a target market, everything like that. They're going to set up and they're going to be starting to make whatever kind of whiskey they desire. But probably they're also going to want to design in a bit of flexibility in order to give them the same flexibility as the large-scale newer distilleries to make other things. Makes them less reliant on buying in whiskey from other sources when it may or may not be available. And it also gives them the ability to be far more innovative, creative, and bring different products and different takes on their whiskey presentation style. So lovely to see so many of you in again. Thank you so much. I know it's a wonderfully balmy day in Glasgow. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining when I whinge about the heat. If you hear a noise or bizarre audio, it's because I've brought the fan right next to me. It's really, really warm in here tonight. As I say, I think it touched 30 degrees in Glasgow today. Our thermostat in the house said 29.5. So crazy, crazy warm. If it's nice and warm and balmy where you are, if it's comfortable weather and you're enjoying yourself, give me a little thumbs up. But these are exceptional days for a temperature to be like that in Glasgow. Very, very few accommodations in Glasgow are set up with air conditioning, for example. So we're all a wee bit warm and sticky here tonight. But because it's so rare, we're really not going to be complaining about it. It was nice to sit out tonight and eat outside and relax in the fresh air a wee bit. It was fantastic. Daniel Vermass is saying, Roy, you have the fanboy next to you. Yes, I do. And that fanboy is keeping me a wee bit cool. Daniel, nice to see you, my friend. Precarious Dave is here. Great to see you. Dave is Floyd Rodriguez as well. Dogs Have No Uncles. Fantastic to see you in again, my friend. Billy Saunders. Whiskey Games. Matthew. Over on the east side of the country. I hope it's nice and warm where you are as well, Matthew. Billy Saunders, fantastic Billy. Desi Vleeland, wonderful to see you, Desi. Whiskey Novice, Molasses, Hell's Wood, Greg's Whiskey Guy, Greg from France, Greg Lewis, Graham Fraser, Malt Minion, Chuck, wonderful to see you, Island Hopper Stewart, Radek, Kresimir, Shane, Erwin, Paul Gibbs, Jim Whiskey Novice, Drew from Arizona, Lee J. Brown, Graham Horner, Lindsay Holman, so many of you. And if you're trying to get my attention tonight, please just type Aquavitae or at Aquavitae, and it's highlighted and I can pick out your comments and chat from the lounge as it scrolls past. And as I'm speaking to Alistair a wee bit later on as well, do the very same thing. I've not harvested or collected any questions for Alistair tonight. It was purely intended to be a kind of, I think it's a really cool story, how Alistair's come to be in whisky and come to be the co-founder of a distillery. You'll hear that story a wee bit later tonight. But as we're kind of sharing and just having a wee conversation, please ask the questions in the live chat. That's one of the luxuries of being here live, that you get to interact a wee bit. If you're watching on the replay, I really appreciate you watching and picking up on the replay. If you've got any questions for myself or Alistair, leave it in the comments section below the video and we will get back to you. Thank you so much. Gregor is saying 30 degrees, Roy. It can hit 40 here in Portland. No place for my Scottish DNA. I hear what you're saying, Gregor. I can imagine that you would struggle, but I imagine that your house has air conditioning built in for such a scenario. Jimmy Jazz is here. Good to see you, Jimmy, saying good evening. Warm here too, 28 degrees. Fantastic. Orange Will is saying 30 degrees is exceptional for us Peely, Wally, Scots. I think you're absolutely right. And, you know, it's kind of the thing that for a few days, we kind of bask in it. We really love it. We almost enjoy complaining that we couldn't sleep through the night because it was so warm and things. But if it was to endure, if it was to be a long-term thing, I think we would get a bit grumpy, right? But it's okay for it to be here and give us a wee bit of a sun-kissed feeling for a few days. Eric Cunliffe is here. Fantastic to see Eric. Stay cool, my friend. Same here in Canada. My blood isn't made for these humid days. The humidity's coming. It's here already, but it's going to get worse overnight. And tomorrow we're looking at thunderstorms and things. Probably clear the air a wee bit for us. Kevin Grant on Whiskey. Good to see you, cousin Kevin. He's saying, glad I can get here on time. Looking forward to it. What's in the glass? For me, I've just finished a wee pour of some Lechik as I was setting up. Some Lechik that was sent in to me by Vlad, a 13-year-old Amontillado cask strength. Very delicious it was. There was only a wee drop left in that sample bottle. But in front of me right now, Kevin, I've got 6 samples all ready to go for Alistair tonight, all from Raasay. I've got 3 different versions. I've got a rye cask, I've got Chinkapin oak, and I have ex Bordeaux cask, peated and unpeated, cask strength samples of each type, all kind of varying at 2 years to 2.5 years old, still very, very young spirit. This was sent to me by Raasay Distillery, all of these, so that he could talk me through it and talk about the things that they're making. I didn't buy these myself. I don't think you can buy these whiskies, honestly. You may be able to buy them as a tasting set or something, I don't know. But they're all sitting in the glasses in front of me just now. Before I welcome Alistair and before I welcome my guest in, well, the first thing I'm going to do is say thank you very much to Terry Dolan. I'm actually on time for once. Got to ring that bell. Fantastic, Terry. Wonderful to welcome you in, my friend, over Northern Ireland. And you interrupted me. It was like you read my mind, Terry. You interrupted me just about to start to talk about a festival that's going to kick off in a few weeks' time, actually about 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time. It's the Belfast Whisky Week. You might remember that Paul joined us a few weeks ago, Paul Kane. He came on and he talked a little bit about the plans for Belfast Whisky Week. But I've looked into it since then, and you really need to look into this to see the scale of what they've managed to put together. Now, I'm a wee bit late to the party. Some of the things have sold out already, okay. Some tastings have sold out for it. But this started last year as a small-scale thing that quickly blew up, and then this year they've had to quickly migrate that whole momentum onto an online platform. And they've managed to do that fantastically well. They've got dozens of tastings lined up, running through from the 24th of July to the 1st of August, so about 4 weeks from now. And just because it's the Belfast Whisky Week, think about any whisky festival you've ever been at in your life. It's fully inclusive. The location is incidental. And in this scenario, Belfast is the incidental location. So there will be a kind of lean towards Irish whiskies, I imagine. Greg Lewis has just bought me a dram saying 93 degrees Fahrenheit here in Texas. Not bad. Always a class act, Roy. Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you. I'm going to raise a glass of this wee rye cask, unpeated Raasay young spirit, and say cheers to Terry and cheers to Greg. Slant you boys. Thank you. But they've taken this online All of these tastings, they're shipping free in the UK, but they're also shipping to Europe, to the States, to North America, depending on the state that you're in. They're able to ship to virtually globally all of these tasting packs in advance of the virtual online tasting taking place. The value of this, I mean, the scope of it is amazing. There's everything that you could wish for in whiskey, honestly. There's even some tastings for antique whiskies, for premium whiskies, for specific styles of whiskies, for specific genres. And the tasting packs are amazing. And the value seems to be very, very good as well. They're delivering free in the UK and they're shipping globally. So I said to Paul when he was on, I said, look, tell me more about this. You know, if it's something I can get behind, if it's something I can support, I'm happy to support it. I have to say, in these times where there is no whiskey festivals happening, to do something to this scale is really amazing. You need to go and look at it. Just go onto Eventbrite or onto their Facebook page and search for Belfast Whisky Week and get all the details there. I should maybe, if Paul's tuning in tonight, put any kind of email address, any kind of web link you want, and I'll ask the admins to make sure that it's shared, that it's not hidden from everyone. And if you want to share it, I know that a lot of the tastings are sold out, but Paul told me that there are still tickets available for a wide range of events, so you can still get involved. So we're looking at 24th of July through the 1st of August. And I'm going to keep talking about that event because I think that's exactly the style of event that's going to endure, not just through lockdown, but even when Belfast Whisky Week becomes a real festival again that we can get together in real life. If they're able to take that model and also involve people that otherwise wouldn't have the ability to get to a whiskey festival because they're remote, because of mobility, whatever the reason is, that's that kind of hybrid scenario that I imagine is going to endure. I think it'll be fantastic. I'm curious about a couple of tastings myself. Paul had invited me to host one, but I'm on holiday that week. It might be that I can fit in and host another one of the events. It would be a pleasure to do that. Have a wee look at it. I think it's fantastic stuff, and it may be a bit of a torchlight to some of the other structures and models that's going on in whiskey generally right now. I think it would be a great way to get more whiskey to more people. Skogsmard is saying, I'm positively evaporating here in Sweden. Everybody's talking about the weather. 31 degrees today. Wow. In Sweden, 31. That's incredible. Bill Monteith is saying, exciting to hear about the Isle of Skye. An Isle of Skye not named Talisker. We'll touch on, well, Torvek will touch on a wee bit of that throughout the stream, I don't doubt. Bill, it could be. But Jenkins is saying, was it the distillery who sent the samples? Can you spell that? Raasay, the distillery who sent the samples? I wonder if I made a mistake. It was Raasay Distillery, the Isle of Raasay. Isle, as in island, Isle of Raasay, R-A-A-S-A-Y. Sorry, bud. It's a brand new distillery. The whiskey that I have in my glass is only 2.5 years old at the most. Maybe some are even less than 2 years. Later this year, around about October, November, we'll hear from Alistair. I think they're releasing their inaugural release, and that'll be their first legal whiskey. And the first legal whiskey on Raasay ever. David Owen is saying, evening Roy and Whiskey folk, popping in for a while, then watching the replay tomorrow. David, absolutely, I encourage you to do it any way that fits around your lifestyle. That's exactly what these streams are intended to be about, my friend. McCann Fine and Rare Doc is in. Good to see you, my friend. Oops. What's happened to the chat? Daniel Grace said 30 degrees in South Wales too, maybe a touch higher. As a raging ginger, it was dangerous for me to go outside. Yeah, I was sending the kids up the driveway on the bikes today, and I said, stop, come back, get some sun cream on, because as I was standing under that sun, it felt like I was in Spain. But I was saying, thanks, Roy. It isn't the title, but I didn't catch it when you said it at first. Sorry, but I'm probably speaking a wee bit fast. Reb Mordecai's in. Good to see you, Reb. He's saying, go on, I dare you. It's too hot to be a snob, especially as you have no air conditioning. Add some ice to the glass. Go on. Reb, there have been streams in the past that I've actually opened on a hot, sticky night like tonight. I've opened with a tumbler glass with ice rolling around inside it. It plays havoc with the audio because of the noise of the ice. And even one time a highball. I am no snob, Reb, and I applaud your encouragement to enjoy your whiskey in such a way. I really do. Bill Monteith is saying, sorry, I got my geography wrong. Hebridean might be more accurate. Absolutely, Bill. The two, Talisker and Torrevake, are the two on Skye. We've got Island of Harris that are up there, just a wee bit north, kind of a wee bit more outer in the Hebrides. And Raasay is just kind of on the northeast coast of Skye, I think. That makes sense in my brain. I hope the geography is right. Wonderful stuff. I think that I know I'm kind of going on about the Belfast Whisky Week a wee bit, but I think it's focused on you, my audience. I think it's going to. There's lots of stuff in there for new folk and people curious about whiskey and things. But I think so many of the tastings there, it was like a list of stuff that if I had the time and the liver, I would be all over the majority of them. Really fascinating opportunities there. Decent value. A widespread, but maybe £20 per tasting, up to, there are some that go into the hundreds. Obviously, there's some really high-end premium stuff as well. So much in the same way that there would be in a regular whiskey festival that maybe had masterclasses and things built around it. Have a look at it. Feedback to me what you think, or feedback to the guys at the Paul and the team back at the Belfast Whisky Week, and let me know how you get on with it. I might, if our paths are, if our paths allow, I may actually see you there. McAlpine Rare Doc is saying, can anybody explain why red-haired people are called ginger? The ginger I have looks anything but red. I honestly don't know, but in Scotland, a bottle of ginger, ginger is just a kind of Scots word or West of Scotland word, I think, for the generic term of like soda or carbonated fruit juices and sweetened fruit juice. So soda and things, we occasionally would call it ginger. And if you think about the ginger I'm talking about, it's iron brew. And I don't know if there's any kind of historical link there. I really don't know why. I don't know why that word is used, Doc. It's an interesting question. We just accept it as such. It would take perhaps a German with your perspective to think that's strange. Hoyt is saying another reason to visit Skye. Aye, there's plenty of reasons to visit Skye, isn't there? But now there are 2 distilleries there and the Hebridean Whisky Trail as well. Graham is saying iron brew. Absolutely, Graham. Jimmy Jazz is saying a Gilligan's Island reference. I'm not even sure. Not even sure, Jimmy, but you're showing your age there. Belfast Whisky Club is in. So, Paul, if you're in tonight, if you want to share any links for Eventbrite, for the hosting page there, for the Facebook page, email addresses or whatever, the admins will happily let it through. And I think that that's going to go ahead and happen. I wish you all the very best with it, Paul, and hope that it goes very well for you. Take a wee drink of this water before I get a hold of Alistair. I think the story behind this distillery is cool. I think what I'd like to do going forward is I would like to reach out to more new whiskey distilleries. I would like to understand a wee bit more about what they're doing, what their ideas are for the future. Maybe the ones that have got interesting stories and interesting whiskies to share, invite them onto the vPub so I could share them with you guys as well. But I got to speak to Alistair at the Lockdown Festival, and I got to speak to him for a little while afterwards. And I got to research a wee bit more about how that distillery came about, how that thing came to be, and I think is a cool story. And also we got to talking about how he envisages his future style, his idea of what he wants to make in an ideal scenario. And it kind of snowballed from there. And I immediately realized that he would be an interesting guy to have on the stream. Jimmy Legg is in saying, stop picking at all the Jimmys. I will defend them. But your name's Blair, Jimmy. And McAlpine Rare say, interesting, Raasay is more central to the east of Skye. Aye, I think that sounds right. You've obviously gone and done a wee Google check, Doc. Simon Ray is saying, it's ginger in England, as my eldest knows to his cost. I think it's widespread. People refer to them as gingers as widespread, but I was just offering a potential source for the west of Scotland. Belfast Whisky Club is saying, cheers, thank you, Aquavite, excellent, Paul, no problem. Steve A is saying, I believe that ginger, if allowed to flower, produces orange and red blossoms. Could be that. Jamie Brown is saying, we're talking about ginger. My goodness. Ginger is a bit orange, but I think Aquavite's explanation is right. I keep my hair coloured by drinking iron brew, whiskey, and pure E130. Aye, that's different from E150, of course, the colouring in whiskey. Skogsmart is saying we should convince Jesse from Stillet to distill iron brew, mostly just to see what happens. I'll suggest it to him, see how we get on with it. Could be quite an amazing wee experiment. Let's get my guest in anyway. I want to spend as much time as I can with Alistair tonight. So there's no kind of, is it a Speyside game or anything tonight? It's just focused on the guest, focused on the distillery, and focused on the whiskey. I'll get a wee thumbs up from Alistair if he's ready to come in and join us. He's in good shape, fantastic stuff. Alistair, my friend, it's nice to welcome you to the vPub. How are you?
Very well, Roy. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I knew when I spoke to you on the Lockdown Whisky Festival that we would have lots to talk about. And it was one of those discussions that I felt a wee bit cut short because of the environment where we were. It was just the after live stream we had a quick discussion. So I'm glad that I've been able to invite you into a vPub so we can explore it a wee bit further. We covered so many things in the tech check the other day that I think the tech check went on for 45 minutes or an hour or something like that. So it's clearly one of those things that one topic just leads to another and an interesting discussion comes along. But one of the things that got my attention was how you ended up here. Tell us, Alistair, who is Alistair Day and how did Alistair Day, a botanist, end up in whiskey? It's cool.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, so most of my working life I've spent working in the food industry. Everything from growing mushrooms and I know all the jokes, I won't go through them. And latterly in cheese, and so there's some similarities with cheese because cheese is fermented and matured. So there's a little bit there.
Yes.
But the botany thing, the degree in botany from Glasgow University, that's what got me into the food industry. And as I say, initially growing mushrooms. So yeah, I know, fun guy. Bits of dark bullshit, had all of that. So that's how I got started. And really, my whiskey connection actually goes all the way back to 1820. So my great grandfather was a whiskey blender in Coldstream in the Scottish borders. I see that business started in 1820. They had Coldstream Brewery. They had a licensed grocer shop, and they blended whiskey. So my great grandfather left school in 1895. He joined the business as an office boy, and then in 1923 he took over the business, and it changed from J&A Davidson to Richard Day. And that basically he carried on right up until the Second World War. Obviously, during the war he had to close down. By that time he was kind of at retiring age. So after the war he retired, and his retirement was really making a couple of phone calls each day, selling some casks and heading off to the pub, which sounds fantastic to me. But that was the end of the business, unfortunately. And my grandfather and his two sisters would have had to start from scratch, and they weren't. That really wasn't for them. So unfortunately, that was the end of the business. But my father inherited what the family called the cellar book, and I actually managed to dig it out tonight. So this is the cellar book.
Wow, I'm going to put you on full screen here because this is fantastic.
So this is actually a sales ledger for, there we go, 1881 and 1882. So that's all the sales for the business. But for us, much more interesting is at the back of the book are all the blends that the company produced from 1899 to 1916. So in round about 2008, 2009, I was thinking about,
So just without giving us any of the recipes there,
yeah,
just pluck a couple of the distillery names from that recipe list at the back.
Okay,
Just
so
indulgence.
I'm not going to read out one whole recipe, but I'll just read out some of the distilleries. So you've got Mortlach, Milton Duff, Ben Nevis, Cambus, Cameron Bridge, Jura, Talisker, Ardbeg, Dalhuen. The most interesting one to me was one called Polo, Pollo.
That's right. Yes, Polo.
I thought, what on earth? Why is he talking about chicken? And then realised that in actual fact, the distillery, same family that owned the Ross family that owned Balblair, had Polo before, and in the recipes, when you go through it, he actually, what was really useful for me, if you look, you can see there's lots of scoring outs and rewriting in and all the rest of it, and that really helped me because I went on to recreate one of his blends called the Tweeddale blend from this book, and that really helped me work out what he was trying to achieve. But one of the ones that you often interchanged was Polo and Balblair. So basically, for that one blended Scotch whisky, the Tweeddale, he had a pool of 16 different distilleries that he worked from, but the blend itself has only actually got 9 whiskies, 1 grain, and 8 malts in it. So I was able to go through all of this, and this is the less gramma's, but turned it into a spreadsheet. Managed to put all the flavour piles, tasting notes, scores, and then broke them down. And so that pool of 16 into what was the base, what was the middle, what was the top dressing. So this book basically got me into the whiskey business, and my father said I could have this book if I did something with it. So hence the Tweeddale blend in May 2010.
Well, that's fantastic. That's. I mean, we all look for stories. We all look for foundations. We all like the kind of romance of these things. But that's a very real thing. Okay, it skipped a generation or two there, but you always had that in the family. You had this whiskey history, this heritage.
Yeah.
So you were able to reach into your heritage, but also you had an active, real, tangible record. So that when you designed and you put that Tweeddale together, okay, it's maybe whiskies from 100 years ago versus contemporary whiskies, yeah. But to the best of your ability, you're trying to create what was essentially a common thing back then for grocers, delicatessens, and independent merchants in cities and towns up and down the country to control and manage their own blends and give their customers the same consistent bottle or refill to whatever vessel they were bringing to fill at the shop. So that's where Johnny Walker was founded. That's where all these kind of famous blends were founded. So when I saw the Tweeddale, I think I've been familiar with the Tweeddale for a number of years now. The first one came out about 8 or 10 years ago, something.
Yeah, it was. So my first Tweeddale was May 2010. Yeah, so 10 years ago. Yeah.
9 whiskies, 8 malts, one grain.
Yeah, Lowland, Highland, Speyside, and Islay. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And then, so you've kind of brought this old blend into contemporary times. But what I did notice about it, and what I've always been aware of, the Tweeddale was a blended whiskey that was presented naturally. You wrote on the label natural colour. You wrote on the label unchill filtered. You put it out at 46%.
Yeah.
And you put it out at an affordable prices. I know there's been special editions and more expensive, older, more mature ones. But the standard Tweeddale, is that important to you, that presentation?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to, that very first release that I did, I wanted it to be as absolutely close to the recipe in the book. So it's exactly the same distilleries, exactly the same percentage of those distilleries. As you've said, I can't say that it tastes the same as it did in my great-grandfather's day, because obviously the distilleries have moved on, 100 years later or whatever it's going to be. I can't say that, but I can say it's exactly the same distilleries and the same quantities. And obviously there's blends in the book that I couldn't recreate because, the likes of Polo's long gone, so I wouldn't be able to do that. But the other thing that fascinated me in here as well is that, in the recipes, I'm going to see if I can find an example of it. He he wrote how much water he put into. I knew how to reduce it by. Typically, I can't find an example. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So, like, I don't know if you can see right down in the bottom here on this recipe.
One moment.
Sherry for colour. So he added. Sorry, I'm going to just. You'll see there. So he's adding sherry for colour. So clearly, I couldn't do that because it's not allowed anymore.
Yeah.
But that's
so he's not talking about sherry matured whiskey, because the majority of all of the whiskies in that list would have been from a sherry cask.
Sherry cask, yeah, absolutely.
He's actively adding a splash of sherry in there to flush and colour the whiskey. Yeah,
sherry or rum. And interestingly, he bottled sherry and rum and sold claret, and so there was lots of interesting things in the cellar in this book. So
he had it on hand. Yeah.
So that's for me why it was like, well, actually, do you know what, that is natural colour in a strange sort of way. So that was kind of me trying to keep it as close to, and he couldn't have chill filtered it anyway, you know. So
sure.
That was the idea. So.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Let me tell you, I'm very glad that you held off on adding a splash of sherry to colour. And if we kind of move on, so you've kind of had this, the blending business has been there, you're kind of plodding along there, and then you must have come to a realization at some point that you were going to constantly be facing the challenge of sourcing for that blended product.
Absolutely. So I mean, I literally went and bought 9 casks to get started, and they were all, you know, they came ranged from 10 to 21 years. So that first release was a 10-year-old, but it still had some 21-year-old space in there, because again, in the book, there's no, from 1899, there's no, he doesn't record the year of distillation because he didn't have to. But from 1916, all of the years are there. So I can see what he was doing and how he's putting it together. So, and that's another thing, just having that little moment of history in the book, when it goes from not having to record the age of whiskey to having to record the age of the whiskey, and it's actually live, if you like, in there. But so literally bought 9 casks, 10 to 20 years old. Obviously, every time I made a batch, I had to replace some of those casks, but some of them, particularly the Isle, which only made up 2% of the blend, that lasted me for five releases, you know. So, but if you think about it, 2012 was when a lot of the bigger distilleries started taking their age statements of whiskey. So it was really, really difficult to buy aged whiskey in a cask. It got harder and harder to do that. So that was one obstacle I came up against.
So that was probably at the point that the available mature stock was at its most acute, or it's most difficult to source. That kind of makes sense. So all kind of age statements start to drop and be replaced, and
so it was really, you know, the supply, if you like, was really limited because everybody needed that, and particularly 15 to 16-year-old whiskies were just impossible to get. So it made me obviously think, how am I going to do this? How can I keep it going forward? And obviously it was going to, one of the options was to buy new fillings. Obviously you need to buy a certain amount of new fillings to be able to have access to that. So that involves a lot of cash. So I started doing the numbers and working it out. And when I actually put that all together, I suddenly realized for that amount of money, you could probably build a small distillery. So the other way of having and securing your own liquid is to build a distillery and distill it yourself. And so in 2012, 2013, I wrote a business plan to build a distillery. And of course, because the heritage is Coldstream in the Scottish borders, that business plan was for a borderless distillery. And to cut a very long story short, that whole trying to find someone who wanted to invest in the distillery, and talking to a whole host of different people, that's how I met Bill Dobby, my business partner, and R&B Distillers is his business. He's the sole investor. He's put all the money into the business, and that started this conversation about, okay, Bill was really interested in getting into whiskey and building a distillery, but he was like, is the Borders the right place to build a distillery? And we had a conversation that probably lasted a year, I think. And during that time, we would meet and chat, and I would say, well, my other paternal great-grandfather was Alan MacDonald. He was from Port Voller on Point and Lewis, so the Outer Hebrides. Obviously, by that time, Harris was well underway, and everyone was aware of that. So that wasn't there. But we started talking about this, that if you're going to build a distillery and you're going to have a style of whiskey, what is it? What makes it? And that's it is all about the provenance and the place, and eventually the people and all those things that makes the whiskey. And where can you make a whiskey that gives you that hopefully different style that's maybe not out there? And so we started thinking of the different locations where we could build a distillery. And Bill's best friends from school, Ian Hector Ross, his wife Marion's family is from Raasay. Anyway, that's a kind of vague connection. But basically, the Borrowdale house at Isle of Raasay Hotel was derelict, was available for sale.
Which is the house that we're seeing right behind you just now, Borrowdale House, right?
That's Borrowdale. We kept that and refurbished that a bit. On either side of that and in front of it, there were some fairly typical late 70s, early 80s extensions that were put on to make it into a hotel, which we clearly demolished and started from scratch in that respect. So Bill and I went up to Raasay in May 2014, and it stood there, looked at the views, just thought about where we were. And yes, it is off the east coast of Skye. It's between Skye and Applecross, and you've got this rugged, windswept island with the geology, amazing geology, in a very small place. So that started thinking about water and what effect that would have on the water. And then you're like, well, I had this whole thing about, can we grow some barley there as well, and start to bring it all in, have our own beer. So we stood there, and that's really where the realization that this was the place to.
What you're talking about is something that happens in whiskey, and you've just got to let it happen. And that's that wee splash of serendipity, right? That you'd probably, when you're writing that business plan, you don't picture what you have behind you right now. You don't picture a Hebridean location. None of these things. You've probably got your idea. You've probably got now maybe 10 or 20 or 30 years from now, when Borders is established again as a whiskey producing region once more, then it might have been much easier to attract investment and get that idea germinated and things. But what you have behind you now, I think, is really quite unique.
Yeah, I mean, so we knew we were going to be a new distillery, and it's that whole thing about we wanted to be contemporary, and we wanted to be transparent about being contemporary, but we've got history, we've got heritage, we've got this beautiful Victorian building, which has actually got 6 ensuite bedrooms in it, so you can come and stay in the middle of the distillery.
Listen, there's already chat about an aquavitae barfly visit to the Hebrides using the Raasay Borrowdale House accommodation, and all of the nonsense. I can see it now. It's almost, if I looked at the chat right now, I guarantee there'll at least be somebody talking about that very thing. So yes, continue, please, Alistair.
So it was that whole thing, and we've tried to carry that all the way through. About just the transparency, the place, the provenance. We have now grown our own barley on Raasay for 3 seasons, and that was challenging, because Concerto and Laureate don't ripen. Raasay is fairly wet because of its location. I'm sure maybe not today, but
sure.
But that means the growing season is really short. So you've only got from May till August to grow barley. So again, cutting a very long story short, we did a variety trial the first year with 5 different varieties. We grew Concerto as a control. We grew Bear. Obviously, Bear is a an ancient landrace is
Yeah.
exactly what the illicit distillers used on Raasay when they were making their high quality spirit on Raasay originally.
Yep. You know, let's call them hobbyists.
Yeah. There's a couple of interesting sites on Raasay that you can actually go to, and you can by the water, and you can see.
Is it not Raasay that's got like a stone cave with the remnants of a still in it or something?
You've got just across the road from the distillery is a souterrain. It's like an underground chamber from Iron Age Celtic times. But further, there's a couple of areas in the island that very definitely have the sort of remnants of
days gone by.
Yes, indeed. So, so that really is, I suppose, that inspired us. But at the same time, we knew we were going to be a new distillery. So you can see from the building behind me that it's very contemporary. It's very modern, and the beauty of it was that we had a blank sheet of paper. So when we then, once we said it right to Raasay, and we went on to, and what is the spirit going to be? What is it going to taste like? And we started with that first. So we started with what is our whiskey going to be? And it was lightly peated, so not unpeated or heavily peated, but lightly peated. So by that, I mean in the bottle about 20 parts per million, something like that. And dark fruits. So dark fruits for me is that kind of cherry blackcurrant flavour, and that kind of stems out of some of the older 70s more type whiskies that had that kind of peat in the dark fruits, but not from necessarily the distillation, but from coming from very old casks, and you get that laterally. But that was a seed of the idea, and again, the other thing for me was this word elegant. I want it to be an elegant spirit, and of course, what does that mean? And probably not a lot, but that was
all of the things that you mentioned there. All of the things were tangible. I know that when we spoke originally, you talked about you wanted it to be full bodied. You wanted it to have weight and oiliness, a good viscosity. You wanted it to be peated. You wanted it to be very rich and have dark fruits in there. You wanted to have that kind of. I can see, the lightly peated thing. All of that you can understand, and you can. There are ways I guess there are process ways that you can. That you can realize that, and then you say this word, but the crazy thing is, Alistair, when you say the word, I know exactly what you mean, because I use the word often. You want it to be elegant. You want it to be. You don't want it to be all these things sitting on top of each other. You want it to be refined. You want it to just sit well. You want it to receive well. You want it to develop well. When you finish it and you think about it, you want to immediately go back and try another sip. You want this craft, I know exactly what you're speaking about. Yeah. But when you went to your contractors or whoever's to say, it's got to be elegant, how did they then? I can understand.
Yeah, we worked with a company called Allen Associates, who are chemical engineers. So again, that first conversation was like, well, we have to start with what's the liquid going to taste like? And that's, what is the spirit going to be? And that's where it came from. So yes, it is like, it's going to be lightly peated. It's going to have dark fruits. It's going to be elegant. And by that, when you get into it, what we're really talking about, it has to have complexity, depth, and balance. That's the kind of thing. So complexity and depth is great. Complexity is fantastic. But if the complexity isn't in balance, to me, then we're not elegant. So that's what it's about. We also knew that we were setting out to make a young whiskey, something that would be 3, 4, 5 years old initially, and we had to build that in. We had to have a process that would allow us to do that and give us complexity, depth, and balance at a young age. But we also knew that we wanted to have 10, 15, 18, 20 and older whiskey as well. So
you needed a robustness to be built in so that it would mature well on top of.
So already you're already talking about two very different new make spirits. That one, and for me, I always say you can't change the aging process. The aging process takes time. That's how long it takes. You can't change that.
That's right.
The chemistry of it, that to get those lignins and the big complex molecules in the oak to break down only happens with time, and it only happens with interacting with the spirit. So we can't change that. But what we could do, and hopefully have done, is we can design a process that makes different styles of new make spirits. So some lighter, some heavier, and you see that, you know, some will be more viscous and some will be much lighter. And we'll talk about how we've done that in the new make spirit. But the other thing that we can do is we can introduce some of the flavors that we're looking for in different ways. So some of that's in the new make spirit, but some of that's coming from the wood policy, the different cask types that we're using. You know, so we've used casks that add black pepper. We've got, you know, that's the rye cask. We've got casks that add dark fruit, you know, obviously black grapes. You've got the Bordeaux red wine cask, but we've also got Quercus Muhlenberg chickapin cask. So North American oak grows in all the same areas as Quercus alba. Quercus alba is your standard North American white oak that's used for all of bourbon, if you like. But Quercus Muhlenberg is different because it's actually a sweet oak. The acorns are edible, but instead of that classic vanilla and sweet spice that you get from Quercus alba, it's softer and it's slightly more mellow, and it gives you dark fruit flavors. So for us, that was what we're looking for. And we also, because these are...
While you mention this, I'm going to hold up this dram. This is a 26-month sample of chinkapin oak. Look at the color. Yeah. 26 months.
Yeah.
So I mean, is this virgin oak? This oak?
Yes, it's a virgin oak cask. It's high char, so it really increased the surface area with that high char, and we've got all that charcoal. So that does take some of the, if you like, impurities out of the new make spirit, but also high toast. So we have a high toast because that caramelizes the natural sugar in the wood. And again, our new make spirit is quite sweet. So we do long fermentations. Our fermentations are between 3 and 5 days. So we have fermentations up to 118 hours. That in itself puts in those dark fruit flavors, but also gives us a slightly sweeter new make spirit, which again is one of the elements we wanted. So you can see that, you know, that is giving us the color. And as you say, that this is 26 months, so just over 2 years, so it's got more time to go. And these casks that we're talking about tonight are for our signature malt that comes out, will be bottled in April next year, 2021. So we've got this 6 cask,
a core range style product.
Yeah, so that's and that's our unpeated new make spirit and our peated new make spirit. So we've got two of those actual separate.
Okay. Have you got the same drams in front of you that I have tonight?
Yeah, got them here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll walk through them, but there's a few things going on in the chat. The first thing is an incidental thing that Jesse from Stillate is sourcing Iron Brew to distill it right now. In New Zealand, you can distill at home as a hobbyist, and Jesse's built a community and a YouTube channel around that. The channel's called Stillate. He's buying Iron Brew, and he looks like he's going to try distilling Iron Brew, which is great fun. It looks like, Alistair, unfortunately for you, that there's already a plan being hatched in the lounge of an Aquavitae trip to Raasay. All the barflies coming along. I know you don't have accommodation for everyone, but it looks like tents are being provided. And finally, I've got a hello from the chat from Leanne, Scotch on the Bayou, from Louisiana, who got to hang out with you on Isle last year.
Hi, great. It's great that she's on.
How can you forget Leanne, right?
Yeah. No, I did the Whisky Academy. I spoke at that, and she was there, so we had a good chat afterwards about some of the stuff that we're doing. So
fantastic. Great. She's dead chuffed. She's very pleased. Sorry. That you're in tonight. She's dead chuffed. Listen, I've got a fantastic wee dram that I only just poured while you were chatting. I'd forgotten that this was here. This was another wee dram that's sent, and this is available, and I didn't even pour this. I didn't think about it. But interestingly, this is also a 46%, and I would imagine this is also natural colour and non-chill filtered as well.
Yeah.
This is the whiskey that you have been your sourced whiskey.
Yeah.
that you've been using not just to sell a whiskey, here's a branded product, but this while we wait, this is your best, if I understand it well, this is your best idea of what you can make from sourced whiskies as to try and arrive at some place close to the profile you would like to see coming from Raasay in the future. Is that right? Or
no, it's absolutely spot on. So I mean, R&B Distillers was incorporated in July 2014, and in 2015 we released Raasay While We Wait. And that, two reasons for Raasay While We Wait. One is that we wanted to talk about Raasay. We wanted to talk about the fact that we're building a distillery there, but we also wanted to talk about that style of whiskey that we are now making on Raasay. So lightly peated with dark fruits. Now, the distillery we work with don't do lightly peated. They have unpeated and peated, and they don't have dark fruit characters. So we took their unpeated and their peated that been in bourbon cask for about 5 years. We've added that together, and then we put it into Tuscan red wine casks. And the reason it was Tuscan red wine casks is that our stills are actually from Belfast in Tuscany. And when I was overseeing the stills being made, I was fortunate enough to try some of the super Tuscan wine over there. One of the vineyards I went to was Montechiari, and Marino, the owner, was literally taking me through his process, and we sat outside in Tuscany in the vineyard, looking at the views, drinking his wine, and he's saying, I only buy the best French oak casks. I use them for 3 vintages, and then I get rid of them. And I was like, wait a minute. So this wine, this award-winning wine that you've got, you get rid of the cask. And
again, a wee bit of that serendipity kicking in there. Just you're there for the stills, and you end up finding yourself a potential partner for cask.
Usually drinking red wine in Tuscany. So that was, as you say, fortunate. We brought those super Tuscan red wine casks back to Scotland, and we used them as the finish for our while we wait, and that's how we got the dark fruit into that. So, and you're right, it's natural colour, 46%. So it's allowed us to showcase what we're doing, and that bottle that I've got here is Last Orders, which is our last ever release. This is the 5th and last release of While We Wait. And you mentioned our inaugural release earlier. Our inaugural release is being bottled in November this year, and it is the link between While We Wait and our signature malt in April next year. And it has been 2 years in bourbon casks. In November last year, we took it out of the bourbon cask and we put it into Bordeaux red wine for the last year. So, and that was actually our peated spirit with a very narrow cut to get lightly peated. So that's how we've done the inaugural release. And that's
Bud Jenkins is asking me for my opinion on the While We Wait. I don't know if this is. I don't think this is a Last Orders one that I have. I think this miniature is from an earlier batch. But the reason that I brought it up, the reason I wanted to talk to you about it is I think this is a lovely wee dram. I really do. I visualize. I imagine that everything that I have in front of me just now is at cask strength. I'm going to need to play with it a little bit, bring it down with a wee bit of water. I've got water ready here. But I think what I'm going to notice is that most of these sourced whiskies, I think it was Bud that also asked if I could ask about the sourced whiskies. They're going to be a lot more mature than the 24-month-old stuff I'm sipping here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's certainly in the Last Orders, it was 5 years in bourbon, and then it was 18 months in Tuscan red wine. So you're 6+ years old. I
have to say, it's maybe the way it's put together. I mean, it's more well-mannered, let's say, than I would imagine 6, 7, 8-year-old whiskey to be. It's nice and integrated. There's a wee whiff of smoke there, a wee bit of peat there. There is a nice kind of a very light, delicate spice, fruit. Not a lot of top notes. I'd say it's kind of round about, basier fruit, darker fruit, richer fruit.
Yeah.
But a nice, easy, comfortable dram.
Yeah.
So this is maybe we've talked about your ability, or we will certainly talk, maybe explore a wee bit more about that as we go through these. Your ability to tweak your process and make change your new make in quite profound ways. But this is kind of your target area here, something along this profile.
Yeah. So if you think about the Where We Wait, it is two different new make spirit types in bourbon Quercus alba cask that's then finished in Tuscan red wine casks, which are French oak, so Quercus Patria and Quercus Roba, and they're two very different. They're all, it's all French oak, but Patria is a fine grain and Roba is a wider grain, and that in balance means that you get different interactions with the wood. So you got three different oak species. You can tell them about this now, can't you? You get three different oak species.
It's fine.
And so it's back to that thing. Yes, it's a young whiskey, but complexity, depth, and balance. You know, that's what we were trying to do. And knowing that we're always going to release a young whiskey from Raasay, there was no point in us going out and sourcing 12-year-old single malt and saying, well, you know, we're doing this until it was much more about, this is the approach that we're taking, and this is the style that we're trying to make on Raasay. So
there's an inevitability that people in the chat are asking where this sourced malt is from. Now, potentially not all the batches are going to be the same. I don't know if you're able to say, but one of the questions I've been asked is from Market Whiskey Bond is saying, if I had to guess, what Highland distillery would you say it's from? To me, and I don't know this, I've never asked you this, but to me, it's playing a wee bit like an Arran. It's kind of that nature. So just to kind of feed back to, if somebody was to enjoy, to my palate anyway, was to enjoy an Arran can sometimes be a wee bit orange, a wee bit marmalade to me, a wee bit, and I didn't talk about that tonight, but that's the closest I can pick from the top of my head. Are you able to share where you source it from, or would you rather that it's not?
I can't actually name the distillery because our agreement is that we can't, but it is a Highland distillery that do unpeated spirit.
That do peated and unpeated spirit. Okay. So I mean that, but to give somebody some feedback on me having a sip at this, I think it's a lovely, easy sipping dram, and I don't think this is expensive. This while you wait, these malts that you're selling, while you wait, literally they're going out at what, £40, 40 something pounds.
Yeah, I mean we've got a special deal on at the minute. It's £45, and you get 2 of our branded Glencairn glasses with it, that with free delivery at the minute. So it's in that kind of ballpark.
Oh, okay, so you're trading, you're fulfilling those orders throughout. I know that you're not distilling right now, but you're able to do.
Yeah,
we're good.
Orders,
Excellent. I mean, I think this is a very nice, well-mannered, easy to drink, enjoyable whiskey, and it tastes quite a bit more mature, I would say, than the ages that you've been talking about. I would quite happily have a bottle of this, honestly. So we've you've got that dialed in. Then that's kind of your best representation that you've been putting out there of something, a profile that you think represents Raasay that you would like to have produced on Raasay going forward. Just quickly, because I noticed it's another question that came up in the chat as well, is that we've got X rye here, we've got X Chinkapin oak, which is a very specific type of North American oak, virgin casks, very active casks as well, but in a different way from maybe Alba would typically be. And we've also got the X Bordeaux. How much are you maturing and standard, either refill or first fill, or perhaps virgin oak Quercus Alba?
Yeah, so all of the casks so the Chinkapin oak is virgin oak casks, and the wine and the rye casks are first fill. So everything we're filling at the minute is either virgin cask or first fill cask. And we do more or less 6 months of unpeated barley and 6 months of heavily peated barley. So our heavy peated barley comes in at 48 to 52 parts per million. So we do campaigns. So if you like, we've got 50% unpeated and 50% peated. And so that's, for that signature malt that's going to be bottled in April next year, it is these 6 casks. So three cask types, 2 spirits types. So essentially 6 cask maturation policy brought together. And we'll talk about how that goes together as well, because, going back to the book, when you get back to blending, it can be counterintuitive sometimes, I think, because I've done tasting with people and we've made the blend as we've done the tasting going along. And for some people, their initial reactions go, well, my favourite whiskey is this, so that's what I'm going to base it on, and then I'm going to put smaller proportions of other things in. It's actually the other way around. The one you put least in is the one that is your top dressing, is the one that floats across the top. So you need a base, and I may as well go through it now. We know we're going to taste them, but the rye casks are our base.
The rye casks are your base.
Yeah.
So what these are going to bring straight away is I do have a bright freshness from them. There's a clear spice there. There's a dryness. But there is a kind of nice creamy thing going on there as well, almost like a vanilla. There's quite a lot of heat there because it's cask strength. So I put a wee splash of water in this one. Yeah.
So these are all sort of 60.9, 61% at the minute from the cask.
Never cease to be amazed what a wee splash of water on a whiskey can do. It's quite amazing, right? Okay, this is the unpeated.
Yeah.
The viscosity is there. There's a lovely texture. Spice is there. You mentioned pepper. I get the pepper. I'm also getting a kind of like a green spice, like I don't want to say a ginger, but it's something that's quite herbal, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
A nice. I don't think I could pick out that this isn't rye heavy. This isn't very, very super active and rye, is it? I mean, do you think you could pick that out as rye cask?
It's really, really interesting. So we with these rye casks, so these are actually Woodford Reserve rye casks. After 3 months, when if it's been in the cask 3 months and you taste it, it's just like black pepper. It's just bang, and it's just, particularly with our peated new make spirit, you get the smoke and the black pepper, and it's just full on.
Right.
By this stage, by kind of 18 months onwards, that black pepper is coming down, and you start to get a bit more. And for me, it's kind of butterscotch, the creaminess and that kind of sweetness. So, I guess the way to look at the rye cask, we are using the rye cask as opposed to bourbon cask because we want that black pepper, we want that spice in there. But as I alluded to earlier, our recipe has to also get us to 10 plus years as well. So once you get past the contents of the cask and into the wood, these are Quercus alba casks, you're going to get those classic vanilla notes. So it starts off. For our young whiskey, for our 3, 4, 5-year-old whiskey, it's given us black pepper and spice and butterscotch type notes, which is great for our 3, 4, 5. But you keep it in that cask and it goes further into the Quercus alba, you're going to get much more of your classic vanilla bourbon type flavour. So it gives us flexibility in the recipe as well with these casks. Yeah.
That's interesting. And what you touched upon there about the different new make in the same cask.
Yeah.
So I've not put any water in the peated one yet. So the ones I'm trying just now is the ex-Woodford Reserve rye, unpeated against peated.
Yeah.
And as I went into the peated one there's a gloopiness here. There's a really teeth-coating, gloopy thing. Everything's intact with the first one. The spice is there, nice dryness. If dryness and creaminess can exist in the same thing, then it is. It's not as peaty as I imagine. Mm-hmm. Clearly there's youthful spirit in here as well.
Yeah.
If you what's the PPM specification of the barley you mentioned?
So the barley comes in at 48 to 52 parts per million. So it's heavily peated barley. However, we produce the unpeated spirit and the peated spirit differently. So if I talk you through what I mean by that,
yes.
So we have a 1 ton mash. It's basically your 2 waters, your your 3 waters that you would expect from that. And we're a balanced system, so a 1 ton mash, which gives us 5,000 litres. And then you've got the 5,000 litre washbacks. We've got 6 washbacks. They're stainless steel washbacks, but they're jacketed, so we've got cooling jackets on the washbacks. That gives us a little bit of control over the fermentation, particularly
is that because you want to push the fermentation for extended periods?
Yeah. So part of it is conditioning. So having a cooling jacket on there, and the temperature we tend to go for is about 32 degrees C. So on our unpeated, when we're using unpeated barley and we're doing the fermentations, we can cap that at 32 degrees C. And the reason we do that is that if it goes over that, then you get much heavier, you get much more of the kind of fusel oils and heavier compounds building up in your fermentation. So that's when we're doing peated barley, we have the cooling jackets off and we let the temperatures go higher, and so we're actually building up more of the fusel oils in our fermentation before we even get to distillation. So that's the off and on thing I was talking about being able to start with a blank sheet of paper, design a process with flexibility. So that's the first off and on bit that we've got. We've also we use predominantly distillers yeast, but we've also used some champagne yeast, and we've used some yeast that would be more typical in grain whisky. And the reason for those 2 other yeasts is that champagne yeast, particularly the one we use, which has also been used in things like mezcal and stuff like that, build up dark.
I need to send you a wee sample of Loch Lomond's distillate from wine yeast. I'm really encouraged that you're experimenting with yeast, because I'd heard stories that it could fundamentally change things.
Yeah, it does. It also changes the yield. So we've got to balance all of that out. But I think we have to. So that's like the fermentation. So we've used 3 different yeasts so far, predominantly distillers yeast. Cooling jackets offer on. That's the first offer on, and then you get to the wash still. I don't know if you probably can't actually see the wash still, but behind me. But this is it here. So it's got a lamp.
We can try. Hang on.
It's a kind of so this is the wash still here. So lanternette wash still. This is the line arm, slightly descending line arm, and you'll notice there's a cooling jacket here on the line arm, and a little collection pot and the pipework that brings it back down into the still. So again, the cooling jacket can be off or on. So for our unpeated wash, when it's going through the wash still, we have that off, and for our peated we have it on. Now again, probably a little bit counterintuitive, because what happens is when it's on, the heavier vapors condense and go back down into the still, and we build up a loop. So we're actually, over the 8-hour distillation, we're building up those heavier compounds. And in fact, when that's on and it's running, and you look at the spirit safe, the copper in the spirit safe actually goes a silver color, and that's actually the fusel oils building up and sticking to the copper. So you can actually, if you like, see the difference with that on. So again, just being able to have that off or on allows us to, and with it on, you can really notice the difference in viscosity of the spirit. So that we're purposely making a, if you like, lighter, unpeated new make style, and a heavier, more viscous peated.
More weight to the peated.
More weight to the peated. And again, this is when we vat these 6 cask types together. It's all about what we said earlier: the complexity, the depth, the balance. And then the one other thing we've got that can be off or on is on the spirit still. So our spirit still is a classic swan neck spirit still with a slightly inclined line arm, so you get some natural reflux in the line arm. But just as it gets to condenser, there's a set of valves. I mean, if we close that valve, it doesn't go to the condenser. It goes to a little purifier. So it's a 6-plate, the bubble cap, 6 copper plate purifier. So if you imagine, if you took that and you put it on top of the still, you would have a Carterhead or a Lomond still.
Lomond still, yeah.
But we put it sat in the corner. beside the condenser, and so that valve can be off or on. So we can have it, and obviously for peated spirit, we would have the valve open and everything goes straight to condenser. But when we've got our unpeated spirit, we can divert it. And if you like, it just polishes it up a little bit, for want of a better phrase. And it really focuses it on that blackcurrant note that we've got in the unpeated. So these are a number of different things that we can have off or on. So you can see already, before we even get to the wood types, if you add in the yeast, you've probably got 5-6 different types of new make that we can produce just having these different things.
Which is exactly what the kind of angle of this discussion. I hope that the takeaway would be something along those lines, that the days of having a distillery house style or distillery character, that's a legacy concept from distilleries that have been producing large volumes for a large market, that's blended whiskies. So that the malt that they make has to be consistent in order to make the blend consistent.
Yeah,
it's the only way to do it. Whiskey is a very fickle organic product that's matured inside another organic product, and consistency has always been one of the challenges that the industry's had to grapple with over the years. So that when somebody finishes a bottle, they replace it with another and can enjoy the same experience.
Yeah.
When you're enjoying malt whiskies, for single malt whiskies, premium whiskies, you're coming at it from a different angle. So when you're looking for variation, for engagement, for quality, for new experiences. So when you're setting up your distillery in a modern contemporary era, not only are you free of shackles from any legacy or heritage, you can make any whiskey that you want, but you can also set yourself up almost ignoring that concept of a house style distillery character.
Yeah.
You can set yourself up to be able to modulate what you're making, to constantly refine the product year by year, batch by batch, and you can play a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for us, again, it's back to this complexity and depth thing. How do you get complexity and depth into a young whiskey? Well, you've got to produce different styles of whiskey. You've got to mature them separately, and then you can bring them back together, and then you can go back to my great-grandfather's book and use that philosophy of bringing them in different proportions to get that climate depth. But you have to have balance. You know, you can't just throw in different things and it's all got to be balanced out like that. So absolutely, it allows us to produce different styles of new, to have specific wood policy, and everything we're talking about tonight is a signature malt that's coming out in April, May next year. So next year, 2021, and that's these 6 different cask types. We also have other casks as well. So we've got Manzanilla cask, which I think work particularly well with our spirit, because it's a very, very dry, pale sherry, but it's more coastal, and you get some of these salty notes coming in. So we are doing these other things as well. And the other thing I should have said is that when I said that we're doing 6 months of unpeated and 6 months of peated, we bleed through. We don't stop clean. We don't have separate tanks and all the rest of it. So
that's interesting. Yeah,
we have an intermediate period, number of casks, as we switch from unpeated or peated to unpeated, that we know exactly what's in that cask. We know it's intermediate. So
you're almost embracing the fact that the gradual incline that's going to give you from one to the next, rather than a cut off from one campaign to the next where you're cleaning, flushing, and starting from scratch again. That's interesting. And then you're able to then obviously follow those casks, so you don't know exactly which are intermediate casks.
Yeah. So that will allow us to do a number of different things. We can then bring that in as another level of complexity in the bathing for signature malt, or that is another bottling for the future. And just as the Chicopin oak, the Bordeaux wine, and the rye cask can all be individual releases or single cask bottlings in the future, we need all of these different elements. As you say, it will allow us to have consistency. So we will have the signature Isle of Raasay malt that hopefully become known for, and people will be able to buy and they know that's Isle of Raasay. But then we could have a peated chinkapin cask that's bottled as a single cask bottling, or we could have just the chinkapin and the wine, or we could just have the rye on its own. And anyway, so
or a lightly peated version of the same, or because it's an intermediate cask. Jimmy Legg as well has just bought me a dram. Thanks, Jimmy. He's saying, can you ask where their malted barley is coming from, and also if there are any dunnage warehousing? I can't imagine.
Yeah, so all of it's 100% Scottish barley. We've worked initially with Beards and then Crisp, so it's all northeast of Scotland. It's all so the peated barley is all peated using Highland peat, so it's more floral smoke that we're getting when we're on peated. And we've also grown 3 seasons of our own barley on Raasay as well, and they're completely different varieties. So we've used Bear barley, Skria from Iceland, Braga from Norway. We've also had some barley from our Beaky, so some Concerto from Angus. So we've got a different area of Scotland that will be able to look at that whole
barley
provenance about where the barley is grown as well. And this year we've got a variety called Saloma, which is again Norwegian specific flavour profile from that barley that's really interesting, and we're growing that. That's been grown in Shaftesbury up in Orkney for us this year. Some of the Raasay barley that we grew, that we had malted, we used Raasay peat to malt. So we've got 3 years of very limited Raasay, if you like, 100% Raasay barley spirit that's maturing in the warehouse now. In terms of dunnage, yes, we have one dunnage warehouse. So when we started, we have a warehouse directly behind the distillery, which is 300 square metres. That's where we do all the cask filling. So we pump the spirit from the distillery up to the warehouse. We reduce it. I should also have said we've got our own well on site. So all of the water we use in the process for cooling, for cask reduction, and for bottling in the future is all from our well on site. And I'll maybe come back and talk that a bit more detail about what that brings as well. That we knew when we built that we were going to have to build other warehouses. So last year we finished 2 new warehouses on Raasay, just behind the village in Bararish. They are 1,000 square metres each. One is earth for traditional stowed dunnage, and the other's palletised. And when we did that, there's room for a third 1,000 square metre warehouse that may be palletised, maybe racked in the future. I mean, the dunnage is for everything, so palletised for 4 or 5 year old whisky, absolutely fine. But for anything that we're going to age on past that, you really want it to be in contact with both ends of the cask, and so the dunnage is, so the dunnage is absolutely crucial, and I think potentially racked in the future. It's always a trade-off. I mean, Raasay is a small island. It's 14 miles long, 3 miles wide. There's 160 people live on the island. We want to do everything on the island.
Sorry, say that again. There are 160 people live on Raasay.
Yeah. And we've had up to 20 people who live on the island working in the distillery.
And so 3 miles by 14 miles. So real estate is always going to be, and I mean, it tends to be a challenge anyway with these things.
Yeah.
So
remarkably, that's the same size as Manhattan, but the population's different, obviously.
Bill Monteith is saying he's grown to love coastal whiskies. How does Alistair think they will be different or similar to the established island offerings? Yeah,
so I think, as I say, we're trying to do and will do everything on Raasay. So we're distilling on there. We use our own water, so our water adds to it. So our well, basically where the distillery is built, is on top of Jurassic sandstone. So it's really, really old sandstone. But a lot of the geology, a lot of the rock around that, including the highest point in the island, Duncan, which actually forms up part of our logo, is volcanic rock. So you've got basalt and granite, and they are impervious but full of minerals. So the water runs across the impervious volcanic rock, picks up all these minerals, ends up in the Jurassic sandstone where we are and where our borehole is, which is like a big sponge, and then we draw it up. So our water's slightly hard, and then most distilleries in Scotland, soft water, ours is slightly hard. And that hardness actually adds to the sweetness that we get in the fermentation, and it's also got manganese. So the manganese is important to us because it actually helps the yeast development, helps the yeast reproduce. In fact, it's essential. So at that level of manganese, so that for me starts the process. Now, clearly, in distillation, all that water that you use for fermentation, the vast majority of it you still out again, because you end up with 70% alcohol. Yeah. But the fact that we use exactly the same water from the same well for our cask reduction, we take it from 70 down to 63.5. And then we're using the same water at bottling. So what we've distilled out, we're adding back in. Anyway, I'm kind of digressing from the whole.
No, I'm enjoying listening, because you're talking about concepts like water, soft water versus hard water, which is interesting, and there aren't many hard water distilleries up and down the land. That Anok strikes me as one that they've talked about hard water sources and things. Some of the Highland distilleries, but for the majority of Scottish water sources tend to be slightly acidic soft water. Yeah. Graham Young is saying he's bought me a dram. Thank you so much, Graham. Saying Agravite. I'd support a Cask Barflies Raasay. See, there's another thing kicking off in the lounge, and I picked up on it earlier today as well, talking about investing in an Aquavite Barflies Raasay cask. Cheers to you, Alistair Day, for beautiful description and explanation. The devil is in the detail. Cheers to you, Graham Young. Thank you for your drama, friend. Cheers.
So I never really answered that Maritime bit there, but I think the fact that our warehouses are on Raasay, and the fact that it's only 3 miles across, it's going to. But I think not in our young whiskies. I think that whole kind of salty maritime note that you'll get from us being a small Hebridean island is in time. So I think that's something that will develop in time. It's a bit like, going back to the fermentations. So we do 5-day fermentations. The yeast at 70, so our shortest fermentations are 70 hours. After that time, the yeast starts dying off, so you get lactobacillus development. And the lactobacillus development, so the lactobacillus actually comes in on the malted barley, but because we're giving it that time, and there's something like 32 different strains of lactobacillus that identified in different distilleries around Scotland, and every distillery's got a different flora of lactobacillus. So the fact that we're allowing, even though we're in stainless steel, the fact that we're allowing that lactobacillus,
the local environment,
it adds that. It adds flavour, but it adds acidity. So with our hard water, by getting that lactobacillus development, we've still got the acidity that we need to have the interaction with the wash and the copper in the still. So, but yeah, the Maritime thing I think is going to be interesting, and that's one of the reasons we've filled some Manzanilla casks, because I think with our spirit in Manzanilla, you're going to start getting that kind of saltiness that you would associate with Maritime.
Ross is asking, how does a distillery make a decision to go back to a bottling that was only a special release? Not sure what you mean there, Ross. He's saying, can they do that successfully? For instance, Ardbeg Dark Cove was a wonderful bottling, but I don't think we'll ever see it again. I don't know. I don't know what your point is. You're absolutely right, Ross. When there's a special release that comes out, especially one that's celebrated, that everybody loves, the kind of question is, why don't they go back and just kind of make more of that kind of thing? And I think that's it's very much down to this idea that we often imagine. We talked about Anok there when we talked about Knockdhu Distillery and Anok. We talk about ex-bourbon cask being the most prevalent cask, but the Anok 16 was exclusively refill cask, ex-bourbon and refill cask, nothing else. And it disappeared. It was made discontinued. Why? Because they didn't have the depth of stock. Our perception of what whiskey's out there and the actual real numbers of what whiskey's out there are often not the same. And what they make is often what they make with the stocks that they have on hand at that point in time. And that's what can be challenging to make a consistent product. In terms of how that affects what we're talking about tonight, I think that you're going to be in a situation that it sounds like there will be very little that you have anything extremely well stocked. You'll have.
Yeah, I mean, what we're trying to do, and but again, you know, everything from having these different parts of the process that can be off or on to have different new make, we are trying to have a complexity of casks. So it's absolutely, you know, the 6 casks we're talking about now, absolutely, that's our backbone. It will be our future DNA. That's our signature malt. But we're also filling in some Quercus Patria, French Patria casks, virgin oak casks, high char, high toast, some Quercus Roba casks, high char, high toast, some Hungarian Patria casks, high char, high toast. We've got some Quercus Humboldti casks coming, which is actually from Colombia. So this is a bit of an in-joke about our Colombian casks, but enough
Colombian cask, yeah. Do they come empty?
We've got Oloroso casks from the Bodega. They're not transit casks. Pedro Jimenez casks. We've got some German oak. We've got some Netherlands oak. We've got going back to that point of why doesn't a distillery go back? Well, what we've got to do as a new distillery is we've kind of got to be thinking, what is it you might, you know, out there in the future? What is it that might be that special release, and how do we do it in such a way that we're always laying down
enough stocks? Yeah. I mean, it must be really tough. It must be tough. Alistair Gray is saying, this is Whiskey Geek Heaven. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Alistair. Alistair Gray and Alistair Day. And Alistair Gray has been a supporter of mine for a long time. He spells Alistair the same with the D as well. Raymaster is saying, funnily enough, in today's Kilhoman live stream, Anthony Wills said that for them, their Maritime character goes away with age because the cask influence is getting too strong.
Interesting.
So that's a wee bit about is that an additive thing that's coming in because of the environment then, or is it, which is often talked about as being unlikely because how does salt or whatever, if that is if we're talking about a Maritime character being salty, right?
I think you've got to be careful with the word Maritime. So for me, when I'm talking about Maritime, I'm meaning a saltiness, a kind of salty note that you're going to get either from the likes of a Manzanita cask or from the environment, from the fact that we are humid and by the sea, that it will slowly impart itself into the cask over time. I completely get what Anthony's coming from and saying that, you know, obviously the wood influence, depending on what cask type that is, the older it gets, the more influence the wood's going to have. I mean, that completely get that.
Yep.
But then the other Maritime is the Islay peat. You know, that wide cut, that, you know, heavy phenolic, iodine, medicinal. That's also a Maritime character. Now, what's interesting for me for that is that in the cask, it does reduce. But then in time, you get phenolics as the oak breaks down, which I've already said takes a very, very long time. As that oak breaks down, you actually start to get phenols from the oak itself. So it does go down, but it does come back up again. Now, whether that's truly Maritime or whether we're just talking about different phenolics, I think we're probably talking about different phenolics. But so I would separate Maritime with saltiness for us on Raasay.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you're talking about there, because we've talked about different stages. You're talking about peat. You're talking about hundreds of years, thousands of years potentially of organic breakdown there that can add to it. You're talking about how during the process, the general environment that you're making your whiskey, you're mashing, especially your fermentation, how the local flora and fauna can play a part in it and things. Cut points, everything before it's even getting to that maturation cask, and then how much of that is going to fade away, you know, maybe the time, maybe environment, maybe the cask, the subtractive maturation is going to take some of it away. Maybe more dominant additive influences from the cask are going to mute some of them out and things. It's all that massive web of complexity that we come to enjoy in whiskey. There's lots of great comments coming in. Reb Mordecai is saying that he's confused. How can a cask be both charred and toasted?
Very good question. Yeah, so when you char a cask, it's the naked flame. The naked flame burns the wood, literally chars it, and then you throw water on it, and depending how long that flame's on the wood is your level of char. So we have a really high level of char, so it's that flame's on the wood for a long time. Toasting is indirect heat, so it's not. It's like sticking a bit of wood in front of a 3-bar electric.
It's radiative heat, yeah.
And you don't want it to char the wood. What you want it to do is you literally want it to caramelize the sugars in the wood. So we have high char and high toast in those virgin oak casks, and that's our kind of thing with virgin oak. Now, if you look at something like the Woodford Reserve cask, there's virtually no toast in that at all, and it's a medium char level. So you can see that just by looking at the colour straight away. You can see that okay, so it's not a virgin cask, it's a first fill Woodford rye cask, but their charring and lack of toast, because we're using those casks, obviously determines the colour, and you were saying it's not that active.
So when you're talking about a heavily charred virgin oak cask,
yeah,
and a toasted virgin oak cask,
yeah,
you're maturing your spirit in 2 separate casks.
No, it's the same. It's the same. So we char and toast the same cask.
So you've got a heavy char, so that kind of black bubble, that cobbled effect, that really kind of textured effect. You've got heavily charred, and then you go in and you toast something that's already been charred. Sorry, I should have confused the hell out of everyone having it. At the end of the cask ends are toasted. So you've got the char. Now that makes sense. Yeah. Now that makes sense. So now that's Reb and I are probably everything's just clicked. Okay. So it's the end. So that's a wee bit that's kind of reminiscent then to what John Glaser did for Spice Tree. So when he got into trouble for using the staves, he got around it by French oak, toasting French oak for the end, for the barrel caps.
And the other thing with the virgin oak cask is that we have a minimum specification of 36 months air drying. So some of the first chickapin cask that we use, that chickapin oak had actually been air dried for about 7 years. So it's already degrading before you actually char it and toast it and turn it into a cask. But even 36 months is a long air drying. But for us, for what we're looking for in that spec of the cask, is that, so you go back to the activity. One of the ways you do that is having that long air drying before you actually make the staves.
Lots of great questions coming in. Alistair, Belfast Whisky Week, is saying he's loved Alistair's story tonight. Thanks for the historical insight and a nod to the future. Looking forward to tasting these going forward. Thank you very much. Paul, thank you very much and good for your dram, and good luck with the Belfast Whisky Week. I've also got McAlpine, a rare dock in Germany, talking about what is maritime. Maritime is just a general adjective for anything to do with naval activity, the sea, or whatever. It tends to be about coastal communities being close to the sea and things, rather than marine, as opposed to marine. Maritime is usually to do with fishing and naval things, I think, or coastal thing. I don't know if that would be right, maritime. I hope that makes sense for you. Mikey Hayes saying, very interesting to hear so much detail about Raasay from Alistair. He's just realised that his business partner Bill used to be his boss in Glasgow 17 years ago. Wow, that was Mikey Hay, Michael Hay. Great guy. How could you have let Mikey Hay disappear? He's living down in London now. Fantastic, Mikey. That's amazing. And Che Francis is saying he put a link in the Facebook group earlier about that wine yeast Loch Lomond. Think it's getting released now. Oh wow, that's actually going to come to fruition then. Fantastic. Pete Ed is asking, will you ask Alistair if there will be an integrity malt and a fully bourbon matured expression? Is there any chance to do fully ex bourbon, or
we've filled some Four Roses bourbon casks, so that will be entirely matured in Four Roses bourbon. And I didn't get the integral. What was the?
He said An integrity malt. Okay, so what he's talking about there is that's kind of a Ralphieism.
Right.
So integrity malt, we're looking for natural presentation. We're looking for an ABV that means that you don't have to chill filter, and it keeps a lot of the kind of intact integrity and the grip and things. We're looking for on-chill filtration and natural colour, but I think that's a foregone.
Absolutely. Yeah, minimum 46.
Excellent. I'm just jumping in here because somebody has suggested that they'd sent me an image on email that was going to summarise Raasay. I don't have it yet, but I will look out for it, Stuart. That was Island Hopper Stuart that sent it to me. Jimmy Legacy, and he lives in Maritimes. Ask me anything. Thanks, Jimmy. And Bourbon Bites is saying, good to have you in. Bourbon Bites is saying, you had me at bourbon. It's funny, it's one of the things that and Reb, okay, the dawning has happened on Reb Mordecai as well. He's saying, okay, the ends are toasted. Good. I had made the assumption that you had two different specifications of casks, but fantastic clarification. Thanks to Reb for that. Wonderful stuff. I think that what we need to do is obviously drink through these whiskies. I've been sipping away on the two middle ones here, which is the Chinkapin Oak, the peated and the unpeated. Again, very, very young, 26 and 28 months old. There's no way that you would put these in front of anybody and they could say that they were as young as that. You know, we're talking about barely just over 2-year-old whiskies. But there is a youthfulness there still. However, these two, that brings in that heavy butterscotch thing. The fruits have changed here a little bit as well. There is a kind of slightly citric thing going on for me tonight. I still clearly taste. Maybe you could convince me it's by the power of suggestion. But I think if I switch these around blind, just by texture alone, one's peated and one's unpeated, I'm going to taste the difference. But just by texture alone, I think you could pick up a difference.
Yeah, I mean, for me, at cask strength, with the peated spirit, when you add water and you look at the glass, you just see the viscosity, you just see the legs as soon as you add water, and a lot less so in the unpeated spirit.
It's very flavourful. There's lots of the what's coming through from the new make is a kind of, and what's really interesting actually, and I should have pointed out when I was talking about the rye cask, for me and a lot of new make, the finish is often a bit saccharine sweet. You know, there's kind of artificial sweeteners that you get. You sometimes get a kind of bizarrely bitter sweetness on the finish. I didn't get that tonight, and I'm certainly not getting that here, but there is a kind of new make confectionery note there. You can tell that you're sipping something that's quite young. There's no way you would place it. I would place it as young as this 2 years. I have my preference for both of these so far, which probably says more about me than anything else, has been to lean towards the peat. Mm-hmm. But I'm left wondering, is that because I'm enjoying the peatiness of it, that extra layer of that puff of smoke, because it's not heavily peated? Or is it because I'm enjoying that, you know, peeling it back off my teeth again, you know, that extra lovely texture? Callum has bought me a dram and said, since Raasay has been locked down, this is the best whiskey I've managed to have in months. I'll lead the official Barfly tour when you're up. That is Callum Gillis, which is Lit Zippo, which is your photographer, video guy. I was watching the snowmobile behemoth video that he put together recently. Callum, great to have you in, and thank you very much for your drama, friend. Cheers.
Cheers, Callum.
That's Callum Gillis. That's Callum. That is fantastic. Everyone is saying, hearing this seems that trial and error is not the method they're using to determine the profile. They seem to know what they want and how to get it. Could Alistair expand upon this? Well, that's probably a good segue into probably what could be, there's a slight bizarre lick to every one of your spirits here, okay? Can I just be honest?
Yeah, okay.
Ex-Woodford Rye.
Yeah.
Chinkapin Oak as opposed to Alba, okay? An ex-bourbon, sorry, ex-Bordeaux red wine.
Yeah.
Okay, this is, so already you're setting yourself up with something that's there's no sherry here. There's no ex-sherry, European oak or American oak ex-sherry. There's none of that here. There's no standard ex-bourbon, first fill virgin oak, a refill Quercus alba here. Everything is a wee bit different. So it almost answers everyone's question there. You're dialing in something that's going to be very, very to your specification. Maybe going back to that elegance, that dark fruit, that.
Yeah, and it's for me, it's how these casks work when you vat them together. And I mean, unfortunately, you don't have it, but this is at 46% at 2 years old, vatted to the recipe, and it's that, you know, it's a cliche, isn't it? It's better than the sum of the parts. It's how these casks fit together, and you know, we did have the luxury of starting with a blank sheet of paper, and that is a luxury because we were able to go, well, what is it that we want to make, and we can make all these different styles, and we can define our wood policy from scratch. And I spent a bit of time with Henrik Molin in Sweden, who's got the Spirit of Ven distillery there. He's a chemist, and I spent a day with him experimenting with stuff, and I was just brain dead at the end of it. But one of the things we went through is Henrik makes his, amongst other things, he makes his own vodka, and he had vodka in these casks. There was no malt influence whatsoever, but we could actually go through and nose, and I was driving, so there was no tasting, it was all nosing, but you can actually go through, and part of arriving at this is by actually taking the malt characteristic out, taking the, you know, all the lactobacillus, all that fermentation stuff out, and just looking at what that cask could deliver. So yeah, all a bit kind of sciencey and possibly experimental, but to a point that we were able to design a wood policy around what actually works together when you vat it together.
There's on these ex Bordeaux at the very end, there's a wee bit of a funk here. Yeah. There's a wee bit of a fusty coming in.
Right.
You had a wee smile there. Is that? Did you expect me to say that, or?
Yeah, I mean the the Bordeaux cask, we've tried to push the boat out a bit. So we've the chateaus that we've worked for are Calon Segur and Chateau Parma, Chateau Margaux. So I mean, these are just like right out there. You know, so Chateau Margaux, the 2017 vintage cask that we used, that old tranche is £1,000 a bottle. You know, it's that level of cask. So yeah, again, it's bringing different things. So yes, at the minute, at 2 years, 24 months, you're getting that wine element. But in another 12 months, it's past that, and it's into the French oak. Yeah. And it, again, it's this balance thing. So the red wine's great, and the high quality Bordeaux red wines we're working with is absolutely fantastic. But it's only going to work when we get past that red wine and into the Quercus Bouschet and the Quercus Roba in the cask, because we need that savoury spice to balance these casks out. So on this one, we need to see it in another 8-10 months to get that balance from the oak that it's missing at the minute.
So the spice is there, absolutely. It's there in flavour, it's there, and it leaves its mark on ever so slightly tannic there, what you would expect potentially from that red wine European oak cask. Very rich, very kind of seductive flavours. Still bright and very vibrant. You can imagine how they might, and with a bit of maturation, you can imagine how it might just round out and settle out a bit over time. But again, what's striking here, it's the same as the first two, is that contrast between the peated and unpeated, and not just because of the smokiness.
Yeah,
I don't want to belittle the ones that's unpeated, because that's not fair. It's just that. And I think it's not because the smoke and peat. I think it's a texture thing.
It's a mouthfeel. And that's the viscosity brings that in the heavy. You know, it's like going back to the Tweeddale blend. There's a really oily Highland malt in that blend, and it's there to give you the mouthfeel and coat your mouth.
Is it the oily Highland malt?
Could well be.
I'm going to show you a wee image here. I'm going to try and do a screen share here that was sent in from Island Hopper Stuart while we've been live tonight, and he believes that this sums up Raasay, and he's calling this image the Ram of Raasay.
Oh, fantastic. Look at that. The Duncan in the background. That's
so that we can see in the background is actually part of your logo then. That's the highest point in Raasay, right?
That to me looks like the East Coast. That looks like the Hallaig side of Raasay. So our logo is made up. The middle bit is when you look at it when you're coming over in the ferry. This one to the side is actually that profile of Duncan from the east side, and then the one at the bottom is the reflection in the little lock in front of Duncan. So it's three different aspects of Duncan.
I see.
Which is why I like it.
I see.
But yeah,
fantastic. Great. Fantastic. I mean, as sheep go, that's a sheep that you wouldn't mess with. But the looks of it, it looks like it's got. Can I show that? It actually looks like it's got a mane. If you see this image here, it looks like a sheep with a mane, a lion's mane.
A lot of the sheep are eating our draft.
So that's maybe what's happening there. That they're doing well on the draft. Fantastic. I have to say, after all you've talked about and after all you've shared, you know what I'm tempted to do? I'm tempted to throw these in the same glass.
Go for it.
But that means I need to ask you what your recipe is. But let me just go. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to just pour a wee bit into the glass I've got the least. That's interesting. Look at that. The one I've got least of is a peated. So I'm going to just top that up by a wee teeny bit.
It's predominantly rye. So most of the casks that we're filling are the rye casks. Then the next by.
Okay, that's me poured two rye together. Okay, there we go. Okay. Now, how much of the chinkapin should I add? Peated and unpeated? I mean, just
if you add both and maybe about half as much again, and then just float some red wine on the top, you're about there-ish.
Now, there's again the peated one. There's only a wee drip left. You can see what I've been enjoying, right? And then just float a wee bit of red wine on top from each unpeated and peated, okay? This is great fun. And I'm just going to give that a wee swirl. And I'll put a cover back on that and jump back into the chat and see what our fantastic whiskey folk and dedicated barflies, what they've been saying. Let's see if I've missed anything. Reb is saying, I'm enjoying this so much, but cannot keep my eyes open. Reb, it's already, 2 a.m. in the morning for you? 1:30 a.m. I'll have to catch up on Sunday. Thanks for inviting Alistair. I hope to meet him in person one day. There's a very, very high chance that you'll meet Reb Mordecai in the future. I've not actually managed to meet him. I feel like I have. It's been years, Reb. I feel like I know you. Thank you, Reb. Thanks for joining tonight. And Simon Ray is complimenting you on your logo concept. Cool logo concept. Okay. And Jimmy Legg is saying, why do I think that every vPub is the best vPub yet? and Mark at Whiskey Bond is saying, do you think the peat works better with younger whiskey? Annandale, absolutely. Well, peat, no. Peat doesn't necessarily make younger whiskey better, but peat displays best on younger whiskey if you're after a peat hit, if you're after a peaty experience. Mark is saying, do you think peat works better with a younger whiskey? Annandale, they're a pot still bottle at 3 years old and now Ardbeg wee beastie. Absolutely, we're seeing a lot of that. I think that Ardbeg have done a fantastic thing there, having the confidence to put a big, bold 5-year age statement from a brand like Ardbeg is very inspiring for the industry. Drew from Arizona is saying, Agraviti, you have a real knack for having the most fascinating whiskey beat people on our vPubs. Like I said, Drew, thank you very much for that. And I'm sure Alistair will be chuffed to hear that as well. I'm trying to bring folk that I have been struck by and intrigued by and try and extend that to you so that you can enjoy that as well. Callum is saying, ladies and gentlemen, he is live the special edition Aquavite recipe being made. That's Callum Gillis. And Precarious Davis saying, fascinating that Alistair started with an idea of how to get the signature style of a house vatting. Some of the parts from the very beginning. Absolutely, Dave. Absolutely. And Alistair said something there, and I have to pick him up on it. He said, it's a cliche, but, and he was almost kind of making an apology to say something that's better than the sum of its parts. Alistair, it's only a cliche if there is never anything better. You know, if there's something better that's come across, to use the old one is maybe cliched, but there's nothing better to come across to say, look, we're bringing this together, and for some reason, it's more exciting. It's better than we imagined it could be when we consider the individual ingredients that's gone into it. And I guess that it's one of these things that's so attractive to blending. Compass Box is a very, very successful business over 20 odd years now, built on that very concept. But they had to not just sell us the good whiskies, they had to sell us the concept. Yeah. And they had to market in an environment that wasn't letting them do experimental things. It was forcing them to use the blended word on everything that they put out. Yeah. And so then they had that extra layer of complexity to define the difference between their blended malt and a blended Scotch. And they've managed to bring these wonderful whiskies to us. Now, we can't really rock back in our chair and say, oh, I can really taste the something. Individual distillery characters. It's a blended malt. It's meant to be crafted to be a very, very nice whiskey. But sometimes that's exactly what the occasion calls for. What we're doing in the glass here right now is a blended single malt or a married single malt. There's far too much peat. it's just super peaty. I'm not saying there's too much peat. I'm saying it's just as fully peated. It doesn't.
You're going to be 50-50-ish.
I love doing this at home. I love. Do you do this? Do you play with whiskey at home? Do you ever? You must, of course, Tweeddale, and of course, you're very well versed.
I set off in my kitchen doing exactly that. Absolutely.
Yeah. But sometimes you make a pig's ear of it. Sometimes you make something that's not that nice. It's got too much of something in it, which is fine. The problem comes when you can't identify what the too much is, what component is too much, how you've lost it. But just keep blending it out at home, and you can bring it back again. This is what I've put in the glass here. It's very spicy, it's very new, it's very young, but it's rich and it's flavorful. And the thing that makes me want to go back time and time again is that lovely combination of grip and spice. So the fruit's been brought along with a nice prickle of spice and things, but that lovely texture, that viscosity. I often say that texture isn't talked about enough in whiskey, but I talk about texture so much that people are fed up with me talking about it. But I think it's a huge part because it's the mouthfeel. It's also the way that it kind of leaves your palate, and is it kind of, it's a feeling as well as how it kind of interacts with your palate and things. And I think that it's very Moorish. It's one of the things that makes you want to go back and recharge. It's a very nice thing to do. McAllen Fine a Rare Doc is saying Raasay has a very kind sales guy. Sent me greetings to him. Send my greetings to him through Alistair, please. Sorry I forgot his name. He is at all the whiskey shows. Who would that be? Who's your representative?
It might have been Chris Hoban, who was with us. He's not with us anymore, but Chris was with us for a good while, so might well have been Chris.
Fantastic. Lots of great Hoyt is saying Ralphie would approve of this little experiment. Simon Ray is saying the thought and vision that underpins what Alistair and Raasay are striving for is impressive. He says, I'm looking forward to following their journey. So can we buy your Inaugural? Is that sold out yet? Is that still available? Is that?
We've put 4,000 bottles online that we're pre-selling. We're just short of 3,000 sold. So
okay, good.
There's some left. Our intention is that that's all sold out well in advance of November when we bottle it. So it is a limited release. There are some bottles that will go to some of our export partners abroad, but for online there's 4,000 bottles, and we're
Are you torn between that? How do we price this aggressively and appropriately, but not give all our margin to the secondary market scenario?
Yeah. I mean, so
I suppose the question I'm asking there is how much are you selling it at?
It's £99. It's £99 a bottle.
Okay.
I can't share a bottle design with you at the minute, but it's a heavy decanter-like bottle, and if you look at some of our Facebook posts, you'll see it outlined as a shadow. You'll get an idea of what it looks like. So we think it's quite a special bottle that it's going to go into.
One of my more favoured rebrandings that's happened recently has been Aaron. Mm-hmm. But Mark at Whiskey Bond in the chat earlier asked an important question, and it is an important question. It's wonderful if your bottle's attractive, but does it glug? And Reb, that not necessarily for every pour, but for the first,
that
it has to glug. And the Aaron bottle, because of its rounded shoulders, it doesn't glug. And Reb also said that he was loving all the information coming out of you, and he hopes that same information is going to make it onto the labelling as well, whether it's the Inaugural or the core range going forward.
So the core range does. The core range will have all 6 casks on the label, and there's a little graphic that's going to show you that represents each of the different cask types. It talks about the water, the place. It talks about the geology. So there's a little infographic about the geology on the label as well. So hopefully everything that I've been talking about tonight is at least alluded to on the label.
I think so. I do think I've put too much peat in that, but it's lovely. I've made a nice wee dram. I'm very happy with it for myself. Alistair, we're already, that's us knocking on 2 hours, ridiculously long tonight. Clearly, I've been enjoying myself. I've been enjoying listening to you. So many folk in the chat have been enjoying it as well. I just wanted to pick up on that. Ellen Hopper Stewart came in and told us where that picture was taken from. The ram was taken near Halleck, where the famous Gaelic poet Sorley MacLean grew up. Halleck being subject of his most famous poem. So there you go.
Halleck, and the ferry's called Halleck as well.
And Drew is saying, is the texture the touchy-feely side of whiskey? Aye, maybe, but a touchy-feely side that you can enjoy on your own, Drew. Steve Baby's saying, Al needs to get Moorish on his bottle. Moorish. Moorish is it's a word that you would use as well, no? Moorish.
Moorish, yeah. You want more, yeah.
I do get some puzzled comments coming in when I use the word Moorish, to the point that one of the guys in Europe actually made a T-shirt with a Glencairn and the word and definition, Moorish and its definition, on a T-shirt for me. Stefan Novak over there. Talking about Stefan Novak, he provided me with a list of fantastic questions, Alistair. Mm-hmm. Bizarre, off-the-wall questions. Are you willing to take a question from Stefan Novak?
Let's go for it.
Okay, let's pick out. Some of these are fantastic questions. I mean, bizarre, off-the-wall questions, things that I would never. I've never met Stefan, but I worry about the way his brain works with some of these questions. Okay, if you could snap your fingers and this long gone or unavailable bottling would magically reappear on the store shelves for £50, what would it be?
So for me, the whiskey that I wish I still had was a Glenury Royal bottling that I probably bought for around about maybe 56 quid a long time ago, and finished And ever since I've been going, why didn't I buy more? So there you go.
That's a signal of two things: loving whiskey for long enough, and age, Alistair. and regret. I mean, I've only been into whiskey since 2005, but I remember seeing, malt like 16 Flora and Fauna for less than £40 and thinking, why would I buy this? And so many whiskies have come and gone in that time at very, very good value prices that it's if we dwell on what could have been, we're going to get less enjoyment out of the now. And I think you represent something else. Actually, you represent what we can be enjoying in the future. So let's dwell less on the past when nostalgia has a hand in things. Let's look forward to. I honestly believe that, and I constantly say this, that now there's an argument that whiskey was certainly different and maybe better in the past in a lot of respects, but there has never been a better time than now to be enjoying malt whiskey, premium whiskey, variation, engagement, quality. We've never had the choice that we've got right now. And in the short term to medium term, it's only going to get a wee bit better. Tony Evans is saying geek overload tonight. Great night, and I'll need to watch again and again. Alistair was so open. Fantastic. Thanks so much, Tony. Mortlach, Flora and Fauna, Hoyt is obviously recalling that one as well. Hellswood is saying, thanks again for another super vPub. Thanks also to Alistair, Helen and Andy down in Milton Keynes. I hope you enjoyed yourselves tonight, and I hope you're comfortable in the ridiculously crazy temperatures right now. Desi is saying, thank you, Alistair, for an informative vPub, patiently or not so patiently waiting for the inaugural release to show up. So there you go. She might have potentially ordered in advance already. I'm going to suggest, Alistair, we've gone on far too long, but I've enjoyed myself. I really have enjoyed it. I'm going to finish with a quiz tonight. There's only, including the quiz tonight and the two vPubs that's coming up before the summer break, there's only 3 left before the summer break. There would be mutiny if I didn't do the quiz. So the folk that aren't interested in the quiz will just kind of drift off. You're welcome to stay, of course, but you're welcome to take your leave since it's just after midnight.
I'll sit and listen to the quiz. I'm not saying I'm answering anything.
Can I tell you, there's a couple of questions in there that's Raasay flavoured, let's say. So we'll have a narrow eye on you for those, because you have to be getting those right. Listen, I want to say thanks to everybody who's going to leave just now before the quiz comes in. Thank you for joining us. If you feel in the mood, if you're not too tired, if you want to stay for the quiz, then I encourage you to do that. The quizzes tend to be a bit tricky. I'm pretty sure I've made it easy tonight. But it's all about kind of trying to kind of encourage people to understand certain concepts or to be curious about certain things about whiskey. So it's not just about the score. You're only keeping your own score. You don't have to share it. And of course, it's multiple choice. Alistair, thanks for staying along with us. Since you're staying for the quiz, I'll say my formal thank yous to you afterwards, and we'll just get right in and try and ask some questions just now. I don't know who's still in here tonight, but thanks to everybody for hanging about to hang in to have a wee bit of quiz time with us. Whiskey Jason is in, Steve A is in, so lots of folk to help manage the chat. Thank you so much. Question 1. One of the world's oldest whats was unearthed during a dig in 2018 on the site of Lindores Abbey Distillery. So we want to know what they unearthed in a dig. Was it A, an ancient kiln or kilns? Was it B, stills, or C, grain stores? Lindores Abbey is famously the site where King James IV sent instructions to Friar John Char to procure 8 balls of malt, whatever that was, for which to make aquavitae. It's the first ever written record in 1494 of Scotch whisky distillation, whatever it would have been back then, known as aquavitae. But there we go. What did they unearth there? Was it kilns, stills, or grain stores during a dig? They believe that it could be the oldest or one of the oldest of its type. Hoyt and Hellswood are giving me a hard time for using the E word, which is easy. And this one is split in opinion. Nobody thinks it's grain stores. Alistair, have you any guess on this one?
Well, I would probably say still.
They did. They unearthed a still. They unearthed an ancient still. I've got a photograph of it here. Quite amazing. I don't know how they managed to hold the liquid in it. Obviously, there was some kind of lining going on, some kind of ceramic of I don't know what kind of this what it would have looked like. But they unearthed that, and potentially it's one of the oldest known stills, medieval still. Quite incredible. Question 2: the top two selling whiskey brands in the US are Jack Daniel's and Crown Royal. But what is third? Is it A, Jim Beam, B, Jameson, or C, Fireball? What is the third best-selling whiskey brand in the US after Jack Daniel's and Crown Royal Canadian? Graham Fraser is suggesting that the first question was an asshat question. I don't think so. I think it was an interesting one, Graham, but I don't mind you thinking it was. Absolutely not. Drew is saying, all about discovering the next Quinta Ruban 12 year for me, Aquavite. You enjoy the Quinta Ruban, actually, you have to, Glenmorangie and obviously Ardbeg as well, the majority of what they do goes out there really quite well presented in terms of ABV and things. Okay, some of the Glenmorangie is 43%, but they've got 46% product out there as well. And the Quinta Ruban is a decent wee whiskey. That has to be said. This is splitting the room a wee bit as well. Have you got any inclination here? You're guessing, aren't you, Alistair?
I'm guessing. I'm going to say Jim Beam.
Jim Beam is number 3. Too Slow, Steve Anderson, Dogs Have No Uncles, and Graham Fraser, Simon Ray, Belfast Whiskey Club, Jimmy Jazz, quite a few got it right. It's actually Fireball. Now, this is an interesting thing because in Scotland and in Europe even, this would not be considered whiskey. I think it's down below. It's mid-30s ABV. This is a blend of cinnamon flavouring, sweetener, and whiskey. It's a liqueur. We would have to sell this fully as a liqueur in the UK. But under the stats I looked at this week, this is actually listed as a whiskey brand, and it's the third best-selling product in the US. Lots of work to do. Question 3. During the huge downturn in demand and widespread closures in the 1980s, which of these distilleries opened? So we're looking for a distillery that bucked the trend and opened in the 80s. Was it A, Loch Lomond, B, Arran, or C, Speyside? Greg's whiskey guide is offended by the Fireball thing. I think he's saying, no, Roy, exclamation mark. It is not. Jimmy Legg is saying, this is the worst question you have ever asked. And I don't know if he's referring to this one or the Fireball one, potentially the Fireball one, I think. We're affronted that the Fireball has even been... I have to say, imagine Fireball is a gateway spirit, a gateway drink, that's presented in a liqueur way that's kind of bringing people into whiskey flavours without that drastic step from what they're drinking right now. Everything has its place. And while I agree with you that it's not a whiskey and for whiskey's sake, Fireball has its place as well. I don't have any here and I don't really want to have any. I haven't even tried it, if I'm honest. But I don't want to be snobby or somehow strip somebody of their experience of sitting enjoying, quite rightly, a glass of Fireball. Aquavite is from Steve A saying, even though it can't be labelled as whiskey, if it were made in the US, it qualifies. In Canada, where it's produced and gets to carry the title over. See. What would you guess about this one? What do you think opened in the 80s?
I think Arran was later, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Loch Lomond, maybe?
It's actually Speyside.
Okay.
Speyside Distillery was granted planning permission in the early 60s. And it was a very, very slow, lazy, slow build throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s. Finally finished in the late 80s, but it took 2 or 3 years, even from that point where it was finished till 1990 before it ran its first spirit. Everything was done quite slowly. What's interesting now, the brand that they produce there, Spey, from Speyside Distillery, is doing amazing things in Asia. And in fact, in Taiwan, it's already the 3rd best-selling malt whiskey. Quite amazing stuff. So just because we don't really buy or drink it much here, it's one of these under the radar ones. It's the one actually, Alistair, that's in the kind of olive oil style bottle.
Yeah.
Super tall, kind of squared bottle. Question 4. The Hebridean Whisky Trail comprises of Isle of Raasay, Torrevieck, Harris, and which other distillery? A. Ardnamurchan, B. Avanjark, or C. Talisker? Which of those distilleries is collaborating with Raasay, Torrevieck, and Harris? I should have really have given Isle of Harris its full name there, to make the Hebridean Whisky Trail. We never even touched on that, Alistair. We never got a chance to talk about that.
No, yeah.
I think I know that in current climate, it's almost impossible to talk about these things. But I would be very much up for doing that very, very trail. I think it would be fascinating. The knowledgeable whiskey folk know exactly what this is, and I know that you do too. It's, of course, Talisker. So it's interesting. It's great that the 2 of the trails that we know about, the Northeast Isla Trail, using Ardnahoe, Bunnahabhain, and Colilla, Diageo are at the table for that collaboration. And for the Hebridean Whisky Trail, you've managed to get them to collaborate on that one as well, which is fantastic, I think.
Yeah, they've been very, very helpful.
It's they get quite a footfall over there on Skye. This is question 5, the picture question. I am not expecting anybody to know what this distillery is. Some of those in the chat may know what it is, but I'm just going to simply ask. This is a malt distillery, but where is it? Is it in Europe, North America, or Asia? So yes, if you know what distillery you're looking at, you've already got this in the bag. But I'm giving folk a chance. You can look at the flora and fauna, look at the colour or whatever you think. Have you got any idea what distillery we're looking at, Alistair? I would be amazed if you did.
I don't.
Be interesting what the folk think. There are a couple of folk in here that I know they're going to know what distillery we're looking at.
Has it got a lot of Hoga stills in it? Or is it, I'm thinking something completely different.
Well, I've not been even close to this distillery, but I'm closely looking at the chat because there's one person here that I'm looking to answer who I'm hoping that he knows. Oh no, I've foxed. The guy I thought might know doesn't know, so there you go. So this is a guess one. This is a bit of an asshat question. I can tell you that we are actually, do you want to have a guess, Alistair?
As to where? I'll say Europe.
Well done. This is actually Armoric Distillery, which is Waregem or something, Waregem Distillery in France.
Right.
So this is one of the... I have tried Armoric French whiskey. It was fine. It was fairly generic, if I'm honest, but I think it's one of those whiskies that's presented at 40%, so it's difficult to really get much of an idea. It's presented as kind of mass market packaging and things, but this is actually where they make Armoric whiskey in France, which is doing very, very well over in France, but we don't see much of it over here at all. Malt whiskey. Jay Francis is in trouble. 1 out of 5, he's saying not looking good. Dogs Have No Uncles is saying 5 out of 5. Last time this happened, he finished on 6 out of 10. Stay with it. Stay with it, my friend. You never know. I think it gets easy from here on in. Question 6. Which of these Diageo distilleries do not yet have a visitor centre to welcome you? A. Duffton, B. Cragganmore, or C. Glenord? Which of those 3 Diageo distilleries do not have a visitor centre? I've mentioned it on a vPub before. I think it's a misstep. I think they should have one. at this particular site, but they don't. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying they have some great stuff at 46%. It's distributed by Gordon and MacPhail in the UK. He's talking about Armoric Distillery. Greg, it's you I was looking for to see. I know that you're located in France. I was wondering if you would know that was a distillery. Interesting that they've got some other stuff to try as well beyond their mass market product. And everybody is shouting. Some people think it's Glenord. Actually, Glenord is one of the most visited visitor centres in Scotland. It's got very high footfall up there because it's close to Inverness. Yeah. Alistair, what would you guess out the other two?
Dufftown, I think.
It is Dufftown. And that's quite amazing because Dufftown is this kind of capital of Scotch whisky, built on 7 stills and all of this thing. And Diageo doesn't have a visitor centre there yet. Question 7. The R&B in R&B Distillers stands for what? A. Raasay and Borders. B. Rivers and Burns. C. Roberts and Beatty. With these questions that I clearly make things up, I struggle to keep my poker face. I don't need to ask you, Alistair, being the co-founder, right?
Yeah.
Doc is saying that he's been to all 3 and Dufftown was a private tour. Doc is from Germany. He's absolutely most certainly been to more distilleries than I have. Everybody seems to think that this stands for, Alistair?
Raasay and Borders.
Absolutely. And the knowledgeable whisky folk are all answering A as well. Raasay and Borders. Question 8. Chinkapin oak is also known as A. Quercus Muehlenbergi, Quercus alba, or Quercus martinetsi. Now, I don't know if it's Muehlenbergi or Bergii and Martinetsi. I don't know. But you can read, if my pronunciation is so bad, is it Quercus Muehlenbergi, Quercus alba, or Quercus martinetsi? Now, this has come out lots and lots tonight, I think. We've talked about it. We did mention this, Alistair, I think.
Yeah, definitely mentioned it.
American white oak is the staple of the Scotch whisky industry for the last 40 years. I have to say, I've made a nice wee dram for myself.
Excellent.
I'm quite enjoying it. This is encouraging. Now, the inaugural will be something slightly different from this, right? But this is what you're envisaging for your core product next year.
Yeah, that's the signature malt from April next year onwards. And the inaugural release is really 2 cask types: it's bourbon and red wine.
Excellent. I can tell you that most of you are absolutely right with Quercus. How would you pronounce that, Alistair?
Quercus Muehlenbergi.
Muehlenbergi.
Named after the man who discovered it, Dr. Muehlenbergi.
And Doc McAllen and Rare actually put his full name in the chat earlier tonight. And he's done it again. He's Gotthilf Henrich Ernst Muehlenberg. There you go. So it must be Muehlenbergi. There we go. Fantastic. Question 9, second from last. Which distillery opened in 2007 but had to double its capacity only 6 years later? Now, I know that's tough, but I'm going to give you an option of 3. Wolfburn, Rosail, Ailsa Bay. Opened 2007, and then already, just within 6 years, they make a significant decision to double the capacity. Quite amazing. Wolfburn, Rosail, or Ailsa Bay. Ailsa Bay is down in Girvan in the Grants complex down there. It's a malt distillery in the Girvan complex. Rosail is in the northeast of Speyside, almost on the coast. owned by Diageo, can make any malt that they want. Wolfburn is right up the very, very top of the mainland. Stole the most northerly distillery crown from Old Pulteney when it opened. But I want to ask, after only 6 years of opening, which one decided to invest hugely in doubling its capacity, Alistair?
Ailsa Bay.
Aye, it was Ailsa Bay. 6 million litres plus wasn't enough at opening. That in 2013, they doubled up to 12 million litres of capacity.
Yeah, makes our 190,000 litres look puny.
Yes. Fantastic hint you've given for question 10, which I fully admit is an asshat question for everyone. Let's see what the scores are coming in. Stevie is saying, oh, cool, glad I changed when I did. Jimmy Legs on 7 out of 9. Donner Pass Whiskey, 7 out of 9. Mikey Hayes, 6. Too Slow, 6. Che Francis, 3. Che, you're doing a wee bit better, but you're going to struggle to meet a pass mark tonight, my friend. I do apologise. Lindsay Holman, 6. Well done, Lindsay. 8 out of 9 for Dogs Have No Uncles. I'm looking for anybody that's higher than that. The run had to end. Is that your first banana skin there? Nobody's on 9 out of 9. Graham Young, who's normally killing it, is on 3 out of 9 tonight, complaining that it's his worst ever. It's really difficult to judge these. You're not going to be any happier with me with question 10. Of the 4 Hebridean whiskey trail sites, the capacity of Talisker is what in relation to the other 3 combined? And the other 3 I'm talking about, Harris, Raasay and Torrevieck. What is Talisker in relation to those 3 combined? Is it about half capacity? Or is Talisker about the same as the other 3 combined? Or is Talisker about 3 times as much? So take Torrevieck, take Isle of Harris, Isle of Raasay, add their capacity together, and then tell me how does that relate to Talisker, which is the 4th player in that collaboration there, the Hebridean Whiskey Trail. Alistair, do you know this?
I do, because you kindly told me earlier. So
this is one of the, when I was talking about capacity, I verified it with you, didn't I? Yes.
Yeah. So about 3 times as much.
Absolutely. Talisker is about 3.3 million litres. If you take Alistair's, as he mentioned, 190,000 litres, add it to Torrevieck, add it to Isle of Harris, you're somewhere in the order of potentially getting close to 1 million litres. And Talisker is 3+ times as much. So there you go. If you answered C, give yourself a point, and that'll give you a final score. Did you keep score for yourself, Alistair? No?
Purposely not, no.
Good. I think you did fine. I think you did great. I think there was only one I picked up on you having a wee banana skin on. And look at Claude Hooker is doing well on 8. Can anybody beat Claude? Yeah, Jimmy Legs on 8 as well. Well done, Jimmy and Claude. Bud is on 8. See, not bad. Bud Jenkins, well done. Good scores. Whiskey Jason 7. Mikey Hay 7. Graham Fraser 6. Pulled it back at the end. George O'Brien 5 out of 10 pass mark. Wonderful stuff. Looking to see if there's anybody. I made an emoji, a very specific emoji for somebody getting 10 out of 10, Alistair. And I have to say, since I've made it, it rarely gets used. Sid Martin looks like he's taking the laurels tonight. 9 out of 10, Sid. Well done. And Dogs Have No Uncles made it. 9 out of 10, easily my best. Well done. Fantastic. Good finish. You only know them if you know them. Well, I have to say, I've had a wonderful time tonight. I knew that before we started the show tonight that it was going to go on. I mentioned that to you. It was fine for us to talk, and however long the conversation took, that is how long it was going to be. I'm glad that you've stayed here to the end, Alistair. Stay till the end credits roll and we can have a wee bit of a debrief. But let me say publicly here, thank you so much for coming on and not just sharing your goal, your vision, how it all came about and things, but very candidly and openly sharing how you've mapped that out and how that's going to be. It's very clear that what you've set up and what you're going to be doing is preaching to us as enthusiasts. So the type of people that come along and hang out in the vPub, they're very excited to see what's going to come out from Raasay. And I hope that as the years tick by, that the whiskey folk are kind to you, that the whiskey gods are kind to you, and we all get something special coming out of an island that's never ever had legal whiskey come from it before. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Alistair. Hang on a wee bit longer, my friend. And to you guys, to everybody here, to all the magnificent, beautiful whiskey folk, dedicated barflies, thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed yourself tonight for any reason, if you've scored well on a quiz, if you've done not so well on a quiz, leave me a wee like of encouragement. And remember that there's only 2 more vPubs left before the summer break comes along. There'll be 2 in July. I think that's the way it's going to shape up thus far anyway. So we're getting close to that point that we're going to just kind of go dark for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and I'll be back in late August, so 5-6 weeks or so. But there's another couple of vPubs to go before then. One of them will have a guest, and one of them will just be me, myself, and I'll come up with a theme that I hope you'll find interesting, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Thanks so much to everybody for hanging out with me again tonight. Jimmy Legg has bought me a wee dram saying so much great info tonight. Thanks, Alistair. No more fireball questions, Roy. I don't think there'll be... That's been 3 years before I've brought out a fireball question. I think you can guarantee that you're safe for at least the next 3 years, Jimmy. Thank you so much for your dram, my friend. Oh, it looks like you've done it. You've bought me 2, Jimmy. I don't know if that was a mistake, my friend. Edwin Laranaga saying great stuff. Thanks, Erwin. So nice to see you. And Simon Ray saying thanks to you and Alistair. Fantastic evening. Simon, thanks very much for joining again, my friend. Gino Kumo is in saying another great vPub, Roy Slancher. Gino, I know that you haven't had your shirt yet. You're the only guy out of that shipment that hasn't received their shipment. There's something crazy going on there, but there's no problem. I'll send you a replacement, my friend. Thanks for joining in tonight. Thanks to everybody for joining for another vPub, and I'm very much looking forward to welcoming you all again a week from now. Until then, drink well and sláinte mhath. Cheers. Thank you.